Chapter 255. Xiao Ju returned to the Xiao Manor in the evening. It was almost dark. He Yan saw him as soon as he walked to the door of the courtyard. He hurriedly asked, "Xiao Ju, do you know Mr. Wei?" Xiao Ju said, "I just came back from the Wei Manor." With that he entered the room. He had gone to the South Manor Army to train early in the morning. Later, he learned about Wei Xuanzhang's death remonstrance and hurried back. He hadn't even had time to change his clothes after returning from the Wei Manor. "I'm going out tonight," he said. He Yan's heart thumped. She looked at him. "Xiao Ju," he walked to He Yan's side and asked, "Do you still have the black jade I gave you before?" He Yan paused. She took the jade pendant from her waist and pinched it in her hand. "I will leave some people in the manor. If I don't come back tomorrow morning, take this jade out of the city and find Shen Han of the Liang province guards." "Xiao Ju." He Yan didn't directly answer his question. Instead, she grabbed his hand, her expression uncertain. "Are you?" She didn't say the rest of her words. There were some things that didn't need to be said to be understood. Xiao Ju looked down at her. He knew that although He Yan was bold, she hadn't done anything out of line in these years. But there's not much time left. After a moment, he put his hands on He Yan's and said softly. He Yan was silent for a long time. She nodded. "I know. Since there were some things that had already been decided, there was no need to be overly cautious. Moreover, from the looks of it now, this was something that would happen sooner or later. She just hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. Don't worry and go." She raised her head to look at Xiao Ju, and her expression became relaxed again. "I will guard the Xiao family for you here. No one will be able to cross my sword. But Xiao Ju, you have to remember that my sister-in-law is pregnant and can't take the shock. So tomorrow morning," she held Xiao Ju's hands tightly, "you have to come back. If you don't come back, I will bring the sword into the palace to look for you." Xiao Ju was stunned and said angrily, "You dare?" He Yan was unmoved. "Let's see if I dare." The girl's gaze was firm. She had always been stubborn. Once she had decided on something, there was no room for regret. After a long stalemate, Xiao Ju finally gave in and said, "I promise you." He Yan smiled. "It's a deal." Night enveloped the entire palace. In the throne room, the crown prince of Guangyan was walking slowly. The palace servants were all dismissed, leaving only a few trusted subordinates to guard the door. He slowly walked up the steps until he reached the end of the steps and stopped in front of the dragon throne. The armrest of the bright yellow dragon throne was engraved with a golden true dragon. He reached out and very slowly stroked the dragon's whiskers and scales. It was clearly ice cold, but it made the blood flowing through his body boil and boil. Guang Yan turned around and sat on the dragon throne. He raised his eyes and looked down at the steps. It was as if he could see hundreds of officials bowing and kneeling in front of him. He was the son of heaven. Everyone should submit to him. When he thought of this, Guang Yan felt proud and elated. His chest was extremely carefree. "Father," he muttered softly, "I have finally sat on this throne." The world was finally his. Since he was born, everyone had told him that Emperor Wenxian would eventually hand over the country to him. In the future, he would become the son of heaven of the Dawei. That was why Guang Yan had always thought so. But he didn't know when, but he realized that the situation had changed. There was a Guang Shua who was more suitable than him to be the son of heaven. Emperor Wenxian's favoritism towards concubine Lan and her son made him panic. His delay in drafting the edict made Guang Yan feel a sense of betrayal. An emperor like Emperor Wenxian was indecisive and didn't know how to judge people. He didn't deserve to be an emperor. Guang Yan thought that he didn't intend to kill his father. But this was the only way to restore everything to its original state. He was just taking back what belonged to him. But Guang Yan looked at the empty great hall. He didn't feel happy at all. He understood that Su Jingfu was the main reason why he had so many followers in the court. Now that Su Jingfu was no longer around, many of his former followers had changed their minds and joined the Guangshua. He Rufei was dead, and he was a fake from the start. If Xiao Huijin joined the Guangshua, he wouldn't have the troops to contend against the Guangshua. He could only rely on the Yudo. This was why he insisted on agreeing to make peace with the Yudo and agreed to their ridiculous conditions of opening a market in Dawei. In the past, he was afraid that the Yudo would leak information and make Emperor Wen Xian unhappy. But now, because he had reached an agreement with the Yudo had to pay the price of getting rid of the Guang Shuo for him, as well as the thorn in his side, Xiao Huijin. It was very fair. Guang Yan believed that there was nothing more important than gaining control of the world. The Guang Yan couldn't help but laugh out loud when he thought about how everyone in the world would have to worship and respect him when he ascended the throne tomorrow. Father's remains haven't been buried in the imperial mausoleum, and your highness hasn't ascended the throne. How can you sit on the dragon throne? A sudden voice interrupted his laughter. I'm afraid that's a little inappropriate. Guang Yan looked in front of him. At the entrance of the great hall, two of his confidants were holding on to the Guang Shuo, preventing him from entering. The Guang Shuo looked at him calmly. Let him in. Guang Yan smiled viciously. My fourth brother. The confidants loosened their grip, and the Guang Shuo walked in. The Guang Yan stood up from the dragon throne and looked at him with interest. Tomorrow is the day of Concubine Lan's burial. Isn't my good fourth brother the most benevolent and filial? Why didn't you seize the last opportunity to talk to Concubine Lan, and instead come here? He said meaningfully. Could it be that fourth brother also wants to sit on this throne? When father was alive, he never mentioned anything about being buried with Concubine Lan. Your Highness's posthumous edict may not be true. The Guang Shuo was unmoved. How is it not true? The Guang Yan sneered. Speaking of which, when father entered the imperial mausoleum, Concubine Lan was buried with Concubine Lan. It was Concubine Lan's good fortune. Father had always doted on Concubine Lan. After he passed away, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to find someone like Concubine Lan, so he took her with him. Fourth brother, why do you sound like you're complaining? With the posthumous edict in hand, how can you prove that it's fake? Whether it's real or fake, your highness knows. However, that's not important. The Guang Shuo sighed. That's right. The crown prince clapped his hands. Whether it's real or fake isn't important. Fourth brother, you finally said something useful. That's not all I want to say. The Guang Shuo looked at the Guang Yan standing on the stairs. His gaze was calm. I also want to say that your highness killed your father, killed the monarch, and attempted to usurp the throne. As soon as these words came out, the entire hall fell silent. The servants guarding the door stared at the Guang Shuo as if they were facing a great enemy. The Guang Shuo only stood there quietly. He didn't have any weapons on him, and just from his appearance, he looked like a weak scholar. The Guang Yan stared at him closely. What did you say? I said. The Guang Shuo's eyes met his, not backing down in the slightest. Your Highness, you killed your father, killed the monarch, and attempted to usurp the throne. The Guang Yan looked at the person in front of him. In the past, the Guang Shuo had always been cautious and taciturn in front of him. He never participated in court affairs. Even though he hated the Guang Shuo in his heart, he was certain that the Guang Shuo wouldn't be able to cause any waves. But now, he didn't know when, but this person's gaze was no longer as timid as before. When he looked directly at him, it was as if there was an invisible fire burning in his eyes. He also had the wanton domineering aura unique to the imperial family. What a joke! The Guang Yan mocked. I'm the crown prince. The world belongs to me. Why would I kill my father? It's a thankless task. If we're talking about usurping the throne, shouldn't it be you? He said eerily. Fourth brother, didn't you always hope that imperial father would abolish the old and replace the young? Now that your plan has failed, you want to slander me? Your Highness, why would you think that the world belongs to you? The Guang Shuo suddenly smiled slightly. Your plan has failed? The Guang Yan's smile froze at the corner of his mouth. He asked, what do you mean by that? The Guang Yan smiled but didn't say anything. He suddenly realized something and loudly called out, Men, come here. Indeed, there were people coming, but they weren't his men. Soldiers wearing golden armor rushed in from outside. The person leading them was actually Yan He. Guide Zhonglong General? The Guang Yan was stunned, then he said in exasperation, Are you crazy? Don't you know that this is rebellion? This is collusion to cause trouble. The Guang Yan didn't deliberately suppress Yan He. Firstly, the Yan family was a new noble family. They had always been wise to protect themselves in court affairs. They weren't as popular as the Xiao family. Secondly, the Guang Yan also heard that Yan He and Xiao Huaijin didn't get along. The enemy of an enemy was a friend. The Guang Yan even wanted to recruit Yan He for his own use. However, Yan He wasn't in the capital for many years. Father Yan was also as cunning as a fox. Although Father Yan agreed to it, he never really took advantage of it. But now, he never thought that Yan He would actually rely on the Guang Shua. The Guang Yan was shocked and angry. How dare you treat me like this? Generals Yan isn't colluding to cause trouble. The Guang Shua said calmly, I'm just following orders to capture traitors. Guang Shua, don't slander me. The Guang Shua smiled carelessly and said, whether I'm slandering you or not, your highness knows best. At this time, someone came in from outside. It was the fifth prince, Guang Ji, who was being carried by a guard. As soon as Guang Ji entered the palace, he pointed at the Guang Yan and shouted, it was Brother Crown Prince. That day, I was practicing calligraphy in Father Emperor's palace. I saw Brother Crown Prince carrying a basket into Father Emperor's bedroom. After Brother Crown Prince left, Chief Steward he went in and said that Father Emperor had passed away. Without waiting for the Guang Yan to speak, the Guang Shua said, Imperial physician Lin from the palace found traces of poison in the blanket in Father Emperor's bedroom. That day, only your highness brought ginseng soup to Father Emperor's bedroom. The Guang Yan sneered, Father Emperor wasn't poisoned to death. He knew better than anyone how Emperor Wen Xian died. If the Guang Shua thought that he could use this to convict him, then he was gravely mistaken. Your highness, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. The Guang Yan was stunned. This was what the Guang Shua had said in response to his fake posthumous edict. But now, there was nothing wrong with using it here. At this time, no one cared about what the truth was. In the struggle of the imperial family, there had always been only winners and losers. The winner was the true dragon son of heaven. The losers suffered a crushing defeat. Guang Shua, I'm warning you. My people will immediately rush over. Tomorrow is the day to enter the imperial mausoleum. Your highness may not know, the Guang Shua looked at him with seemingly cold pity. General Fenyun's people have already arrived outside Qingla Palace. Your highness's people, he said word by word, have all abandoned their armor and defected. Impossible. The Guang Yan's voice suddenly became sharp. He said, impossible. But in his heart, panic and fear gradually emerged. It was already this time. The palace hall was filled with Yan He's people. His people hadn't come in yet. If it was Xiao Huaijin's people outside, those Yudo, bastard. Those Yudo were useless at this time. Chu Xilan. A name suddenly appeared in the Guang Yan's mind. How could his plan be predicted by the other party? Chu Xilan leaked the secret? That bastard. That ungrateful wretch. Guang Shua, don't be complacent. The Guang Yan was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Gritting his teeth, he looked at the people in front of him and slowly retreated. Do you think that the world will believe your nonsense? I'm the crown prince, the heir apparent. The coronation ceremony is close at hand. If you harm me at this time, the world will talk about your conspiracy. Even if you ascend to this position, you won't have a proper title for the rest of your life. You can't avoid being pointed at by others. Your highness worries too much. The Guang Shua didn't feel any other emotions because of his words. He looked at the Guang Yan as if he was looking at something ridiculous. Before this, Imperial Father had already written an imperial edict to change the heir apparent. You're lying. The Guang Yan's eyes were about to split open. How is that possible? The imperial edict is in the hands of Imperial Father's trusted officials. It doesn't mean that you didn't know about it just because you didn't see it. The Guang Shua leaned slightly to the side. The people behind him came forward and handed him a bow and arrow. He played with the bow and arrow and slowly said, Does your highness still think that the world will talk about me and that I won't have a proper title? The Guang Yan wanted to vomit blood. At this time, he suddenly understood what the Guang Shua said at the beginning. It doesn't matter if it's true or false. To shut the mouths of the world's people, all he needed to do was to take out an imperial edict. Who cared if it was true or false? The world wouldn't judge it one by one. As long as the person who survived today was the Guangxua, then wouldn't the Guangxua have the final say in what others said in the future? He looked at his quiet fourth brother who slowly picked up the bow and arrow and pointed the arrow at him. The Guangyan subconsciously hid behind the dragon throne and said angrily, "What are you doing?" Guangxua, stop it. He didn't finish his sentence. A sudden gust of wind blew from the throne room, extinguishing all the lights in the room. In the dim room, a cluster of sticky blood slowly flowed down the dragon throne, staining the dragon's head and whiskers on the armrest of the dragon, making them stand out. It was like a silent peep, but also like a sneer. The sound of the wind covered all the murderous intent. It was a cold night. He Yen looked at the sky that was gradually brightening outside the window. His expression gradually became serious. She hadn't slept since Xiao Ju left last night. Bai Rongwei was pregnant, so He Yen didn't dare to tell her anything else. Although Xiao Jing had some suspicions, she was kept in the dark and didn't know what was going on. He Yen stood guard alone, rubbing the black jade in his hand from time to time. He thought about what to do if Xiao Ju didn't return in the morning. He was afraid that going out of the city to find Shin Han might not be completely safe. Just as he was thinking, there was movement outside. He Yen suddenly got up and rushed out of the door. He saw Xiao Ju walking in from outside. There were still some dark bloodstains on the armor he was wearing. He Yen asked, "You're injured?" At this time, Qing Mei hadn't woken up yet. Xiao Ju frowned slightly and asked, "You didn't sleep last night?" "I couldn't sleep." He Yen stared at his face. He looked a little tired, but he was still okay. He Yen asked, "This blood, it's not mine." Xiao Ju paused and said, "Let's talk inside." The two of them entered the room. He Yen closed the door and turned around to ask, "Last night in the palace, the crown prince is dead." Xiao Ju looked at her. This was expected. In fact, He Yen already had a premonition when he saw Yen He at the Wei residence that day. Yen He didn't directly answer her question, but many times, silence was an answer. He Yen helped him hang autumn wine on the wall. Xiao Ju took off his armor and sat down at the table. He Yen poured a cup of hot tea and pushed it in front of him. "Xiao Ju, what happened last night?" Xiao Ju looked at her. After a while, she knew that if she didn't tell him, she wouldn't be able to leave the room today. She sighed and told him what happened last night. He Yen listened attentively. Xiao Ju only knew a little about what happened last night in the throne room. At that time, he led half of the South House soldiers to fight with the Crown Prince's men in front of Qingla Palace. Yen He led his men inside. When they came out, they only knew that the Guangyan was killed by the Guangxua himself. "You didn't go to the throne room on purpose?" He Yen hesitated before asking. Xiao Ju lowered her head and smiled. She said calmly, "Xiao family is different from the Yen family. The Yen family is new and still depends on the royal family. I have too much military power. If I saw the fourth prince kill his brother, even if it's fine now, the fourth prince will inevitably feel uncomfortable after a long time. I don't want to leave a thorn in the fourth prince's heart." Heaven's power was unpredictable. Without the Guangyan, the fourth prince would be the emperor in the future. Even if he didn't feel anything now, once he sat on the throne, he might not be able to control himself or things might change. It was better to avoid any possible situations from the start. So, letting Yen He go was a good choice. The Yen family's military power is not great, and they are new and have no foundation. The fourth prince has no qualms about using them. He Yen said, "I just didn't think that Yen He would follow the fourth prince." The Yen family had been neutral for so many years. They were as cunning as a fox, but at the last moment, they dealt a blow to the Guangyan. The Guangyan probably didn't expect it either. Without the skin, what can the hair be attached to? Xiao Ju raised her teacup and took a sip. She said, "When it's time to make a choice, even if you don't want to, you have to do it." He Yen sighed in relief. "In short, it's good that you are safe." She looked at Xiao Ju and asked in a low voice, "Did the emperor really write the edict to change the succession of the crown prince early on? Did the fifth prince really see the crown prince poison him?" These things happened one after another, and it was too coincidental. It made the Guangyan's ascension to the throne a matter without any objections. It's not important whether it's true or not. Xiaoju narrowed her eyes. The crown prince is already dead. Everything was settled. Chapter 256. In one night the world had changed hands. The Guangyan had killed his father and tried to usurp the throne. The fourth prince, Guang Shui, brought along guide Zhonglong to arrest and convict him. Before Emperor Wenxuan passed away, he had already written an imperial edict to change the crown prince. After entering the imperial mausoleum, the coronation ceremony was held as usual, but the person who ascended the throne was no longer a Guangyan but a Guang Shui. No one in the imperial court dared to object. Guang Shui's way of doing things was completely different from his magnanimous appearance. He was decisive and ruthless. When he was capturing the Guangyan last night, he had already captured all of the Guangyan's trusted aides. The Guangyan army was not strong to begin with. If it was because of Su Jingfu, they still had the support of the He family, but after He Rufei's accident, the Fuyue army's military power was taken back and could not be used by the crown prince. Guang Shua's actions were swift and decisive, causing people to feel a chill down their spines. The courtiers discussed fervently. The fourth prince's imperial aura was beginning to show. As for the previous emperor's edict ordering people to be buried with him, it was also found to be fake. Concubine Lan, Enai Guren, and dozens of other women were able to keep their lives. When the news reached the ears of the commoners, they all said that the fourth prince was benevolent and wise. The commoners never cared who sat on the throne. As long as they had clothes to wear and food to eat, it did not matter who was the emperor. The courtiers also did not object. Currently in the Dawei imperial family, the fifth prince, Guangji, was still young. The only person who could hold the fort was Guang Shui. Emperor Wenxuan entered the imperial mausoleum. In Qinglan Palace, concubine Lan took off her heavy ceremonial robe. Just as she sat down, someone walked in from outside. It was Enai Guren. "Congratulations, elder sister, for getting what you wanted." Enai Guren walked to the small table and sat down. She put on a fake smile and said, "Soon, this concubine will have to call elder sister Empress Dowager." Concubine Lan looked at her, her eyes as gentle and calm as before. "Noble Lady Enai, aren't you still alive?" Noble Lady Enai was stunned. That day, Wei Xianzhang had killed himself in front of Qingla Palace, causing the conflict between the crown prince and Dawei to reach its peak. The crown prince was so violent and paranoid, and she was going to follow Emperor Wenxuan into the dark tomb tomorrow. In the end, noble Lady Enai cooperated with concubine Lan. Guangji's words were false, so the edict of succession might not be true. At the end of the day, all the Guang Shua wanted was an excuse, a legitimate excuse. In actuality, at that time, noble Lady Enai was also determined to fight with her back to the river. She thought that since she was going to die anyway, she might as well give it her all. But deep down, he did not think that Guang Shua would succeed. However, Guang Shua succeeded. It was said lightly, but after a short night, noble Lady Enai finally realized that if it had been a last-minute idea, if Guang Shua had only fought for his mother, he might not have been able to win over Guide General and General Fengyun in such a short time. Concubine Lan had probably foreseen what had happened in the throne room last night many years ago. Thinking deeper, perhaps concubine Lan was not completely unaware that Emperor Wenxuan had died at the hands of the Guangyan. Guang Shua's silence and gentleness, his leniency and disregard of court affairs, concubine Lan's indifference and gentleness, and Emperor Wenxuan's love and sincerity were all arranged by concubine Lan a long, long time ago. From the beginning to the end, it was not Guang Shua's acting skills that were too good, but concubine Lan's idea. Even her son did not know about it. Empress Zhang might have guessed right about one thing. Concubine Lan was not indifferent, but she did not care about ordinary favors. If she wanted to fight, she would fight for the most honorable position in the world for her son. Therefore, the crown prince was destined to lose because he did not have a mother who could endure for so many years without revealing any flaws. Guangji was still young, and from today onwards, No one in the entire Dawei's imperial family would be a match for Guangxua. Noble Lady Ni slowly felt a chill in her heart. The woman in front of her had a gentle appearance. She had never seen her reprimand anyone in all these years, but it turned out that she was the most terrifying one. It's good that this concubine is alive. Noble Lady Ni lowered her head, and there was a trace of humility and fear in her voice. From now on, this concubine will follow Concubine Lan well. Guangji, I hope Concubine Lan can take good care of him. Concubine Lan did not speak, and only looked out of the window. After a long time, she turned her head back, as if she had heard Noble Lady Ni's words clearly. She nodded slightly, closed her eyes, and said, "Okay." The Crown Prince's residence was in chaos. The servants wept and were dragged away by the soldiers. The Crown Princess screamed as she was taken away. Before she left, she scratched the wall with her nails, leaving a long mark. Someone walked slowly, all the way to the last room at the back of the courtyard. This was a secret room. The Crown Prince's Guang Yan temperament was fierce and ruthless. If someone offended him, he would kill them directly to vent his anger. If it was worse, he would lock them up in the secret room of the Crown Prince's residence and torture them. Now that the Crown Prince's residence was in trouble, the soldiers were busy arresting the family members in the residence, and no one paid attention to this place. The young man walked slowly, his clean boots stepping on the wet ground. The secret room was very dark, and there was only a dim light. Dark traces could be seen, either dried or glowing. It seemed to be human blood. This place was built like a prison. The rooms were separated by iron bars, and there were no guards. Hearing someone move, the people in the room did not react. At most, they raised their heads slightly, and then quickly lowered them. The people here were already dying, and they did not think that anyone would come to save them. Despair filled this place. He walked slowly. Every time he passed by a room, he would stop in front of the door and carefully examine it, as if he was trying to identify the appearance of the person inside. When he found that it was not, he would walk away. They walked through the rooms one by one until they reached the last room. There was a figure curled up on the ground, lying on her side like a child. Her hands were hugging her shoulders, and her head was buried very low in her chest. Her clothes were untidy. Although she did not move, her body began to tremble slightly. Chu Zhao stopped in his tracks. He looked at the figure inside. After a while, he opened the door. The person inside still did not move. She did not even look at him. Chu Zhao walked in front of this person and slowly knelt down. It seemed that he wanted to comfort her, but he did not know where to start. After a while, he said gently, "Ying Xiang." The person in front of him trembled violently. "Ying Xiang." Chu Zhao paused and said, "The Crown Prince is dead. I'm here to bring you back." He reached out and wanted to help Ying Xiang up, but he was blocked by Ying Xiang. She seemed to have no strength, and this little bit of resistance was useless. Chu Zhao helped her to sit in front of the stone wall, and helped her to brush away the messy hair in front of her eyes. Then he was stunned. "Don't look," Ying Xiang said weakly. It turned out that her beautiful and charming face was covered with terrible knife marks. Because she was not properly treated, the knife marks had not scabbed and were dripping with blood. At a glance, she looked like a female ghost who came to take her life. It was shocking and horrifying. Chu Zhao's heart trembled. The night before the Guangxua went to Chengla Palace, Chu Zhao went to the fourth prince's residence. He had already seen clearly that the Guang Yan could not win against the Guangxua. Empress Zhang was also not a match for the concubine Lan. He really did not have any other choice. Even if he followed the Guangxua now, the Guangxua would not use him again. But if he followed the Guang Yan, he would just be tied to the Guang Yan and die together. When Su Jingfu was alive, he told him that no matter what, he had to learn to make choices. He chose to do his last business deal with the Guangxua. He revealed the Crown Prince's military arrangements and betrayed the Crown Prince in exchange for a condition that would allow him and Ying Xiang to live. He no longer hoped to have any achievements in his official career, because it was already impossible. Although survival was a bargaining chip, and he did not know if it would succeed in the end, at least he could survive for now. At that time, the Guangxua looked at him, as if he did not expect Chu Zhao to raise such a condition. He only asked, "Fourth young Master Chu, since you value your servant girl so much, why did you take the initiative to send her to the Guangyan's side? Since you sent her to be your informant, you should not have any other feelings. Now that things have come to this point, other than asking for this woman, you do not have any other desires." Chu Zhao said warmly, "This subject does not understand either." To him, there was nothing in the world that he could not use, and there was no person that he could not use. But every time, at some point, he would leave behind some weak spots that should not have existed. Yan was like this, and so was Ying Xiang. He looked at Ying Xiang in front of him, and for a moment he did not know how to react. Ying Xiang only glanced at him, and then quickly lowered her head, as if she was afraid that she would dirty Chu Zhao's sleeves, and did not say anything else. Outside, the sound of soldiers scolding and servants crying could be faintly heard. Ying Xiang listened carefully for a while and then said, "Is the crown prince dead?" Chu Zhao came back to his senses and said softly, "Yes. You can leave the crown prince's residence." When Ying Xiang heard this, she did not show a happy expression. Instead, she seemed to take a step back and said, "No, do you not want to go back with me?" Chu Zhao asked. "Fourth young master." Her voice was as soft as the most fragile silk, as if it would shatter with the slightest pull. Ying Xiang said, "This servant cannot leave." Chu Zhao was stunned. Why? As if she had experienced a great struggle, Ying Xiang slowly reached out her hand and pulled up her sleeves. Chu Zhao's eyes suddenly widened. The originally flawless skin on her sleeves was now unrecognizable, as if it had been burned by fire, and also as if it had been smashed, and showed signs of ulceration. "The crown prince fed this servant a poison with no antidote," Ying Xiang said. "This servant is a person who is waiting for death." The Guangyan hated her betrayal and disloyalty, and had countless ways to torture disloyal people. Ying Xiang's appearance was extremely beautiful, so he destroyed her appearance. He also made her die in the most heartbreaking and cruel way. Watching the last inch of her perfect skin fester and finally die was disgusting and nauseating. Killing someone's heart, that was all. In an instant, Chu Zhao was extremely confused. He had not felt this way for many years. He looked at Ying Xiang, not knowing what to do, and said, "Don't worry, when we get out, I will find a doctor to treat you." "It's no use," Ying Xiang smiled bitterly. "This servant knows very well that I can't be saved." The burning torches on the wall swayed quietly, illuminating half of her blood-stained face. It was terrifying, and she no longer looked as beautiful as before. Chu Zhao looked at her in a daze. He knew that Ying Xiang would not have a good ending after falling into the Guangyan's hands, but he never expected that it would be like this. She was not dead, but she might as well be dead. "This servant has one more thing to ask." "Say it," he said. "This servant doesn't have much in her life, only her appearance is acceptable." Ying Xiang stretched out her hand as if she wanted to touch her face, but her hand stopped in midair. "Now that my appearance is ruined, and I have taken an incurable poison, this servant does not want to die horribly. Fourth young master, can you give this servant a quick death?" "You want me to kill you?" Chu Zhao looked at her in shock. "This servant's life was originally saved by fourth young master, and now that I die in fourth young master's hands, it can be considered complete. Moreover," the woman's voice was soft, "fourth young master is not harming this servant, you are helping this servant." Chu Zhao said, "I won't kill you." "Then I ask fourth young master to leave." The servant, who was used to being submissive to him, showed a tough expression for the first time. "This servant will stay here, and will not go anywhere." Ying Xiang, Chu Zhao was helpless for the first time. He controlled his temper and said softly, "Your injury is not irreversible. There are many doctors in Shuo City, and they can cure you." "Even if they can cure me, what can they do?" Ying Xiang smiled softly. "This servant has no appearance now, and I can't even take care of myself. If I stay by young master's side, I will not be able to be used by young master, and I will only be a burden." Chu Zhao heard this, and his expression changed slightly. He said, "You stay by my side, only to be used by me?" "Young master does not keep useless people by his side." Ying Xiang replied. These words were like a needle hidden in cotton. And he was speechless. This servant was sold as a commodity by my father in the past, and it was young master who saved this servant. From now on, young master is this servant's benefactor, and this servant will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire for young master. At that time, this servant did everything willingly, but now, when I am about to die, this servant wants to be able to decide my own fate. Ing Xiang looked at him, and that pair of beautiful and gentle eyes, for the first time, seemed to be burning like a flame. Please grant my wish, young master. Their eyes met, and Chu Zhao could clearly see that in her eyes, there was a desire to die. For the first time, he discovered that Ing Xiang was so stubborn. Please grant my wish, young master. The woman in front of him knelt down with difficulty, and with her movements, the terrible scars on her body gradually became visible, exuding the smell of dirty blood. It was just like the first time she met Chu Zhao, and was bought by Chu Zhao, when she knelt down in fear and unease. She did not have long to live, and even if she did not die now, she would not live for long. Chu Zhao closed his eyes. I promise you. Thank you, young master. Ing Xiang said softly. Chu Zhao reached out to help her up from the ground. Ing Xiang staggered and raised her head, and in the next moment, the hand that went around her back suddenly pushed forward. When the tip of the knife entered her flesh, it was silent. She did not even have time to say anything, and was pushed forward, falling into Chu Zhao's arms. Chu Zhao let go of his hand, held her in his arms, and half knelt on the ground. Thank you, young master. Ing Xiang looked at him, and smiled at him with difficulty. This is the first time that young master has granted this servant's wish. Her body was covered with new and old blood, and the blood stains rubbed against Chu Zhao's clean robe, like mottled flowers reflecting on it. The man lowered his head to look at her, and his eyes were a little helpless. It was this little bit of helplessness that fell into Ing Xiang's eyes, and made her heart ache for a moment. She liked Chu Zhao, and from the first time she saw Chu Zhao, she fell in love with him. In that desperate situation, when he was pushed into the fire pit by his father, there was a young and handsome boy who threw him a life-saving straw. She grasped the straw, and also fell in love with this person. She loved his gentleness, and she also loved his ruthlessness. She loved his cold and heartless heart that seemed to be tolerant, and she also loved the moment of weakness and helplessness under his invincible protection. This was such a complicated person, and the more complicated he was, the more unfortunate he was. Fate made him conflicted, and the Chu Xilan that others saw was only the fake Chu Xilan. Only she knew the real Chu Xilan, and the real Chu Xilan was not a good person, but she still fell in love with him without hesitation. These years, Ing Xiang stayed by Chu Zhao's side, and she was made difficult by Madame Chu, teased by the 3 legitimate sons of the Chu family, and targeted by Su Pingting. In the end, she was even sent to the Crown Prince's residence. She had never regretted coming to this point, because from the beginning she had nothing to lose. She hated and resented him, but it was not comparable to love. This love was hidden carefully, and it was extremely humble, and it came fiercely, making her feel that it was unreasonable. She had never said it out loud. She had loved him for so many years, quietly and soundlessly. Chu Zhao was so smart, it was impossible for him not to realize that she loved him. Young master, she said with difficulty, can this servant ask you a question? The man's voice was very soft, and he was as gentle as ever to her. Ask. Did 4th young master know early on that Miss Su would send this servant to the Crown Prince's residence? Chu Zhao lowered his head to look at her. Waves of emotions appeared in his light-colored eyes, which were like fluorite. He did not answer, but Ing Xiang instantly understood. I see. After saying this, she slowly closed her eyes, and her breath gradually weakened until there was no more life. In the dark room, the man dressed in green quietly lowered his head to look at the woman in his arms. What appeared in front of his eyes was the sobbing he heard many years ago, when he stood in front of the colorful paradise of the human world. He looked in the direction of the sound, and saw a delicate girl looking at him, beautiful and peerless. He had saved her, but he had also harmed her. If he had not intervened at that time, perhaps Ing Xiang would have been happier than she was now. Unlike now, even if it was her last moment in the human world, she still had to die with bitterness. She did not do anything wrong. If she really wanted to say something, it was because she fell in love with a person like him. After an unknown period of time, Chu Zhao bent down and stood up, picked up Ing Xiang's body, and slowly walked out of the dark room, step by step, towards the outside. When he was at the end of his road, he made the last deal with the fourth prince, and all he asked for was a little bit of pity and warmth. But now, this warmth was gone. The last person who depended on him for survival was also gone. In this game of chess, he gained nothing. The whole game was lost. Chapter 257. On the third day of the second month, the fourth prince Guang Shua ascended the throne. The new emperor inherited the throne and used the Hezong's Qingyuan era name. After Emperor Zhao Kang ascended the throne, he rejected the Yudo's request for peace and thoroughly investigated the remaining members of Prime Minister Su's faction. He posthumously conferred the title of Wei Xianzhang, the owner of the Xianchang dojo, with the posthumous title of Wenzheng. The truth of the Mingshui case was revealed to the world. Su Jingfu had controlled the court for so many years and conspired with the crown prince to oppress the common people. Now that Emperor Zhao Kang had ascended the throne, the Su faction that followed the crown prince naturally would not be spared. The only exception was probably Su Jingfu's favorite student, the fourth young master of Shi Jin's household. Not long ago, Emperor Zhao Kang allowed Chu Xilan's request to resign. After Chu Xilan resigned, he left the Chu family and disappeared from Shuo capital. It was said that someone had seen him at a relay station outside the city. He most likely left Shuo capital. As for where he went, no one knew. However, no one had seen the beautiful maid by his side. In the courtyard, Qing Mei was feeding Er Mao a cooked bone. He Yen looked at the harmonious scene between the two of them and was a little stunned. "Don't tell me you also want to eat that bone?" Someone beside him asked with a hint of ridicule. He Yen came back to his senses and saw Xiao Ju walk in from outside. He went out early in the morning. The fourth prince should be called Emperor Zhao Kang now. Ever since he ascended the throne, he had frequently summoned him. He Yen understood the fourth prince's plan. There were still some remaining members of the crown prince's faction in the court. Xiao Ju and Yen He were people that Emperor Zhao Kang had decided to put in important positions. This should be a good thing, but He Yen felt uneasy. "Something on your mind?" Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. After the emperor ascended the throne, the matter seemed to have come to an end. He Yen looked at the sky. But those Yudo probably won't let it go. Since they had planned for so many years and worked together with the crown prince and Su Jingfu, now that the crown prince and Su Jingfu had fallen, how could they be reconciled? You also know that from generation to generation, the time when a new emperor ascends the throne is the most dangerous time. With the change of power, the position was still unstable, especially when the people in the imperial court had different opinions. It was easy for others to take advantage of the loopholes. He Yen had also dealt with those Yudo before. No matter how he looked at them, they did not seem like the kind of people who would willingly retreat. "I know," Xiao Ju said calmly. He Yen looked at him. How did the emperor deal with the Wutuo envoys? Previously, the crown prince released those people. Now, some of them have been captured, but the news should have spread to Yuchuo. "You mean they're going to make a move soon?" Xiao Ju smiled and said, "Not bad." He Yen sighed silently in his heart. Although she was a general, she did not like fighting. Fighting meant blood and sacrifice, and countless people were separated from their families. Especially at this juncture. Also, she looked at the man beside her. The man's gaze fell on the yellow dog that was making a fuss in the courtyard. He smiled slightly. This was a rare moment of peace. "Forget it." She swallowed her words. After a while, she reached out and grabbed Xiao Ju's arm. She said seriously, "Xiao Ju, I want to eat braised pigeon tonight." Peaceful days were always short. Less than 10 days after Emperor Zhao Kang ascended the throne, the Yudo wantonly attacked the Dawei. They went north along the Xing River. After decades of planning, the war between the Yudo and the Dawei finally began. Jiuchuan, Ji County, Yunzi, and Bingjiang were not strong enough. Moreover, the crown prince's men had deliberately arranged for them to be taken over by the Yuto in just 3 days. After the Yuto broke through the city gates, they massacred everyone in the city. According to those who were lucky enough to escape, corpses were piled up along the banks of the river. Blood dyed the river red. Emperor Zhaokong was furious and immediately ordered people to suppress the enemy. However, the Dawei had been emphasizing civil and military power for so many years. Other than General Feng Yun and General Fei Hong, there were not many people that could be used. General Fei Hong, He Rufei, was still a fake. The Fuyue army's military power returned to the imperial family. Emperor Zhaokong asked in the imperial court who was willing to lead the army to quell the rebellion. Other than Guide General Yan He and Right Military Governor Xiao Ju, no one came forward. To be more precise, it wasn't that there weren't people. There were also old generals who were willing to take up the sword and mount the horse. Unfortunately, they were too old and couldn't return to the battlefield. The consequences of the Wei imperial family's many years of comfort were finally revealed at this moment. In the throne room, Emperor Zhaokong looked at the civil and military officials below the stairs. His face was gloomy as he sighed. "You are all useless. You cannot protect the Dawei." However, someone walked out amidst the silence and said in a clear voice, "Your Majesty, I am willing to lead the Fuyue army to fight against the enemy in Jiuquan." A woman wearing a red court robe stood in the middle of the hall. She looked very heroic. She raised her head and looked at the emperor on the high throne. Her gaze was clear and firm. This was Marquis Wuan. He Yan was also General Feng Yun's wife. Emperor Zhaokong paused. In the battle against the crown prince, the Xiao family stood on his side. Xiao Ju was also very smart and did not directly participate. Emperor Zhaokong wanted to use Xiao Ju, but he could not give him too much power. After thinking about it, he promoted He Yan. He Yan was a woman. She was only a marquis. Being promoted to an official of He Yan was a reward for Xiao Ju, but it also didn't increase the power of the Xiao family to the point that it made people uneasy. Just as the Empress Dowager once said, "Do not underestimate women." From a certain point of view, the promotion of an official in He Yan was also a kind of check and balance for Xiao Ju. However, Emperor Zhaokong did not expect He Yan to stand up at this time. He subconsciously looked at Xiao Ju. At this time, he was trying to catch some emotion on Xiao Ju's face. Unfortunately, the Dawei's famous Right Army commander was calm and did not show any emotions. Could it be that he already knew about this? But if he knew about this, why didn't he mention it to me in private? Why did he wait until now? He Yan bowed and said, "I have fought against the Yuto a few times. May I ask your majesty to allow me to lead the army to Jiuquan?" When it came to fighting against the Yuto, she was indeed experienced. Whether it was in Jiang or the Rundu, Emperor Wenxuan would not have promoted her. But when it came to leading the army, before Emperor Zhaokong could speak, a civil official said, "Marquis Wuan, you are only a woman. How can you lead the army to fight against the enemy?" "Sir, I'm afraid you have forgotten." He Yan's tone was neither servile nor overbearing. The famous General Fei Hong was originally a woman. The minister was rendered speechless. That's right, wasn't the real General Fei Hong a woman? Emperor Zhaokong was silent for a while, then said, "This is an important matter. I cannot make a decision casually. Let me think about it before making a decision." He looked at Xiao Ju. Up until now, Emperor Zhaokong was not sure if Xiao Ju knew about He Yan's plan. If Xiao Ju supported He Yan's decision, then she would definitely come to him in private. If Xiao Ju asked, Emperor Zhaokong would consider agreeing. If He Yan did not have the ability, the commander-in-chief of the Right Army of Dawei would not easily send his wife to her death. Of course, the most important point was that just as concubine Lan said, there was no one in Dawei. There were only a few outstanding generals who could lead the army. Even if He Yan did not go, who else could? He smiled bitterly in his heart. He felt that the bright yellow dragon crown on his head was too heavy to wear. After the court, He Yan followed Xiao Ju outside. Unexpectedly, Yan He followed behind them. He stopped He Yan. "Hey, are you really going to lead the army to Jiuquan?" He Yan had something on his mind. He looked at Xiao Ju's back and answered absent-mindedly. He followed her gaze and thought for a while, then asked, "Does Xiao Huaiji not know about what happened in the court today?" He Yan did not say anything. "He Yan, you are really amazing." He understood and looked at her in amazement. No wonder Xiao Huaijin looked so angry. You did not even discuss such an important matter with him. You acted first and reported later? Good, if you can make Xiao Huaijin so angry, then it seems that even if you really go to Jiuchuan, those Yudo will not be your opponent. He moved to pat He Yan's shoulder and raised his hand. He probably remembered that He Yan was a woman, so he retracted his hand. He looked at He Yan and gloated, "Xiao Huaijin is so angry. Marquis Wuan, I wish you good luck." With that, he swung his sleeves and walked forward. He Yan was reprimanded by Yan He, but she did not get angry. She did not discuss today's matter with Xiao Ju and directly asked for a conscription in the throne room. She guessed that Xiao Ju was also angry. However, she had many misgivings. She really did not know how to tell Xiao Ju. At this time, Xiao Ju was already walking towards the Xiao family's carriage outside the palace. He Yan hurriedly followed and entered the carriage herself, sitting together with him. The carriage driver drove the carriage. On the way back to the Xiao family, she occasionally raised her head to look at the person beside her. Xiao Ju's expression was calm. The calmer he was, the more He Yan could feel his anger. He Yan did not say anything. She still had to think about what to say. When the carriage stopped at the entrance of the Xiao family's residence, Xiao Ju got off the carriage first and walked inside without looking back. He Yan also jumped down. Perhaps the atmosphere in the carriage was too tense. The kind carriage driver reminded He Yan, "Young mistress, young master's mood is not good today. Why don't you comfort him a little?" He Yan smiled and said, "Of course." She followed Xiao Ju all the way into the Xiao family's residence. When she returned to the courtyard, Qing Mei was drying the quilts in the courtyard. When she saw He Yan, she happily said, "Young mistress, shu." He Yan made a shushing gesture and followed Xiao Ju into the residence. As soon as she entered, she closed the door and was met with Xiao Ju's cold gaze. He Yan did not say anything and went over to hug him. "Calm down first." Xiao Ju stood in the room and did not move. He let her hug him and said coldly, "Don't use the same trick every time." Although there was nothing new, it was good enough that it worked. He Yan cursed in her heart. She did not want to use the same trick every time, but second young Master Xiao liked it, so there was nothing she could do. "Let me explain." He Yan tightly grasped the belt in front of her and said sincerely, "I wanted to tell you, but every time I wanted to say it, I felt that it would ruin the atmosphere. Later, I dragged it out until today. I will say first, I definitely did not act first and report later. Even if I acted first and reported later, the one in the right was the emperor, not you. Today, I was afraid that if I did not say it, the emperor would appoint someone else to lead the troops, so I had to speak first." "Xiao Ju," she raised her head and looked at the other person, "I really did not do it on purpose." Xiao Ju avoided her gaze and said coldly, "Lady He, you are so perfunctory now even when you are lying." She even said the words, "Lady He." It was obvious that she was really angry. He Yan's heart trembled and she hurriedly said, "Xiao Ju, you are the main general. How can you be prejudiced by first impressions? I really did not lie to you." She really wanted to say it, but these days were peaceful. Every time she saw Xiao Ju relaxed, she did not want to mention these things. "Okay, I have some concerns." Seeing that second young Master Zhao's attitude was still cold, He Yan honestly admitted her selfish motives. "I don't know how to tell you." She loosened her grip on Xiao Ju's belt and looked down at her toes like a child who had done something wrong. She said hesitantly, "Yuto is in chaos. You want to lead the troops to Yunzi. Yunzi and Jiuchuan are not in the same direction. If I take the initiative to ask the emperor for permission to lead the troops, and the emperor agrees, I will have to lead the troops to Jiuchuan alone. You must be very worried." She glanced at Xiao Ju's face and saw that Xiao Ju was looking down at her. Her eyes lit up, but he quickly turned his head away. He Yan had an idea. She grabbed his hand and looked up at him. She said affectionately, "After I married you, I saw that all the men in Shuo capital were not as considerate as you. You are unique as a husband. You must be worried that a delicate wife like me will be alone outside. If I really lead the troops to Jiuquan, I'm afraid that you will miss me and worry about me every day. You might even lock me in my room. I am such a delicate girl, I will not see the light of day. She started to talk nonsense again. Xiao Ju was angry and laughed. He looked at her and said, "Lock you in your room?" He sneered, "There is no delicate wife in this world who can break the lock with one punch. That's where you misunderstand me." He Yen pointed at his chest. "Although I look strong and mighty, my heart is very weak. For example, when you were angry just now, I was very sad. My heart was broken," she said shamelessly. Xiao Ju was speechless. After a while, he said calmly, "Do you think that if you want to lead the troops to Jiuquan, I will not agree?" He Yen did not say anything. He stared at the woman in front of him. He was slightly angry, but in his anger, there was a trace of imperceptible helplessness. Finally, he turned and said, "If you had told me directly, I would not have stopped you." He Yen looked at his back and stopped smiling. She said in a low voice, "I thought that if it were you, you would let me go with you to Yunzi. Jiuquan is close to Mo County. You are familiar with Mo County's terrain. Naturally, you would be more willing to lead the Fuyue army to Jiuquan." Xiao Ju's voice was calm. "In Yunzi, you will not be able to fully utilize your strengths." He Yen was stunned. He turned and looked at He Yen. His eyes were clear, magnanimous, and as clear as a mirror, reflecting all of her thoughts. So he knew everything. He Yen paused and hugged her again. She murmured, "How do you know everything?" She was indeed more willing to go to Jiuquan. She had never been to Yunzi before. If she and Xiao Ju went to Yunzi together, Emperor Zhao Kong would definitely send another general to Jiuquan. But no one was more familiar with Jiuquan than she was. It was not that she was confident. It could even be said that no one knew how to win a battle in Jiuquan better than she did. Currently, De Wei had no one to use. The battle was slightly slower in Bingjiang. The situation in Jiuquan, Ji County, and Yunzi was the worst. Even though she knew her own abilities, she was confused by her concern. Xiao Ju was her husband now. He might not be willing to let her lead the troops to a dangerous place alone. Just like how Madame Xiao always stopped Xiao Zhongwu. I said, Xiao Ju's voice came from above. "Do what you want to do. As long as you can do it, it's fine." He Yen looked up and asked, "You believe that I can do it?" He snorted, "There's nothing that General he can't do." He Yen looked at his awkward appearance and laughed out loud. She had thought that it would be difficult to explain things clearly, but now it was clear in just a few words. He was very tolerant of her. He Yen even felt that some of her thoughts and concerns were laughable. However, the emperor might not directly give me military power. He Yan's smile had only just spread for a moment when she suddenly thought of another matter. After all, in the eyes of outsiders, even her title of Marquis Wu and was because of Xiao Ju. Even in Jiang and Rundu, there were Xiao Ju and Li Kuang. She had never led an army to fight a battle alone. If the emperor directly gave her military power, outsiders might not be convinced. "I will go to the palace to see the emperor. The military power of the Fuyue army will probably be given to you," Xiao Ju said, "but you can only rely on yourself to convince your subordinates." "Is what you're saying true?" He Yen suddenly became excited. She had many ways to convince her subordinates. If Xiao Ju could convince Emperor Zhao Kong, then this matter was set in stone. "The emperor didn't directly reply to you today because he was waiting for my opinion." He smiled. "He doesn't believe you, but he believes me. If I promise you, he will believe in your ability to lead the troops. We are in troubled times. Isn't the emperor afraid that if he gives me military power, we will have too much power and be a threat to him?" He Yen joked. At this juncture, whoever had military power would have a chance of winning. Although the crown prince was no longer here and there was no one in the imperial family who could threaten Emperor Zhao Kong, but if a general had too much merit, since ancient times, it was not something to be happy about. Big brother and sister-in-law are still in the capital. Moreover, Sister-in-law already has a child of the Shao family in her belly. In a few years, the emperor won't suspect the Shao family. He Yan's Shirtu was relieved, but she looked at the person in front of her and asked, I have another question. You said that the emperor wanted you to promise me. Xiao Ju, do you believe that I can defeat those Yudo? Xiao Ju seemed to think that her question was ridiculous. He couldn't help but laugh. He turned his head and said lazily, in heaven and earth, who wouldn't admit defeat when they see you? Although the words were said in a mocking tone, there seemed to be a sense of pride and glory in his tone. He Yan was very happy to hear these words. She stood on her tiptoes and whispered into Xiao Ju's ear, same to you, military governor Xiao. I also believe that you will continue to be victorious. Chapter 258. In the end, Emperor Zhao Kong allowed Marquis Wu and He Yan to lead Fei Hong's Fuyue army to Jiuquan. Although there were many discussions in the court, they slowly calmed down. Firstly, it was because of the Shao family, so they did not dare to say anything. Secondly, even if He Yan did not go, there were very few people in the court that could be used. It was better to let Marquis Wu, who had fought against the Yudo, lead the troops. Yan He led the Yan family troops to Ji County first. Xiao Ju led the South Mansion troops deep into Yunzi. There was also the slightly older Hui general who led the troops and the Liang province guards to Bingjiang, where the battle situation was slightly better. He Yan led the Fuyue army to Jiuquan. Of the four of them, apart from General Hui, who was slightly older, the other three were quite young. Especially He Yan. Emperor Zhao Kong dared to give them the military power not because he wanted to gamble, but because he wanted to cultivate his own trusted subordinates. Especially He Yan. If he used him well, he might become the next Fei Hong. After receiving the command seal, they quickly left the capital. He Yan asked Emperor Zhao Kong that when she was in the Liang province guards, Wang Ba and the others followed her to Rundu and cooperated with her during the night attack on the enemy camp. He wanted to go to Jiuquan so that Wang Ba and the others could join the Fuyue army. Emperor Zhao Kong agreed. After everything was settled, there were only 2 days left in Shuajing. Spring thunder rumbled, and it was almost time for Jingzhe. The willow trees had already sprouted new green buds. They hid by the river and dyed the river green. In the noodle shop opened by Elder Sun in the east of the city, a girl in a blue dress was scooping out the noodles from the iron pot. She was young and could only be considered delicate. When people talked to her, she was a bit shy. She was a quiet and shy girl. 2 young people walked in. The younger one smiled and said, 2 bowls of Yangchun noodles. He handed over some money. Sun Xiaolan hurriedly wiped her hands with a handkerchief before accepting the money. Please take a seat inside, it'll be ready soon. Xiao Mai nodded and winked at her big brother. Shirtu glared at her as a warning. The 2 of them found a table inside and sat down. Xiao Mai asked Shirtu, Big brother, we're going to war soon. This time, we're not going to the Liangzhou garrison. We're going to fight those Yudo for real. Since you like Sister Xiaolan, why didn't you tell her before you left? Shirtu didn't say anything. If you don't say it, she's in Shuajing City. What if Master Sun arranged a marriage for her? Xiao Mai looked at her elder brother. We've been in the Liang province guards for so long. Why have you become such a coward? Shirtu shook his head and said in a low voice, I may not be able to come back alive from Jiuquan. There's no need to give her hope and waste her time. He looked at the busy girl in the blue dress and revealed a rare smile. If I come back alive, I'll tell her about my feelings. Xiao Mai looked at Sun Xiaolan and then at Shirtu. After a while, she sighed as if she had accepted her fate. All right, whatever you say, big brother. The noodles were quickly served. Sun Xiaolan smiled and said, Please enjoy. Then she quickly left. Shirtu looked at them for a long time before withdrawing his gaze. A light rain gradually fell from the sky, washing the limestone tiles in front of the shop until they were sparkling clean. The noodle shop's girl went to clean up the empty bowls. When she arrived at the table, she saw a pot of peach blossoms in front of the 2 empty bowls. This pot of peach blossoms had bloomed early, and some of them hadn't fully bloomed yet. They were shallow and deep, with specks of crimson, like the red snow of spring. She was stunned for a moment. and the image of the taciturn, handsome youth surfaced in her mind. After a while, her cheeks flushed slightly. She picked up the pot of peach blossoms and carefully placed it in the room. The mountain was still the same as before, but the bandit's stronghold looked a lot more dilapidated. The man with the scar on his face climbed up the last mound and stared blankly at the bandit's stronghold in front of him. A child leading a cow by the entrance glanced at him and was immediately stunned. A moment later, he howled, "Boss is back!" Being escorted into the stronghold and being called boss by everyone made Wang Ba feel as if a lifetime had passed. After staying in the Liang province guards for a long time, he had learned to obey. As a lowly soldier, it was very uncomfortable to be surrounded by so many people and treated with so much love and respect. He coughed lightly and said, "I came back today to tell you that in a day, I'll be leaving for Jiuquan to fight the Yuto. I also came to see how you guys are doing." Someone squeezed forward and said flatteringly, "After boss left, there weren't many people coming to this mountain. The harvest wasn't good, so everyone started farming. They even raised silkworms. Although it's not as good as when we were bandits, it's better in terms of stability. Second boss said that when summer comes, we'll dig a pond in the mountain to raise fish. In the future, we won't have to worry about food and daily necessities." Wang Ba felt very gratified but also a bit sour. He put on a fake smile and said, "Looks like you guys are doing well without me." Second boss walked over. He was a cultured man who had read books. Back then, when his family was in decline, he had no choice but to become a bandit. However, he couldn't lift or carry anything. At first, Wang Ba hoped that he could come up with some good ideas. Later, he simply gave up and let him stay in the stronghold to teach the children how to read and write. Second boss said, "Boss saw how fierce the soldiers were in suppressing the bandits and felt it wasn't safe to rob them again. That's why he went to the Liang province guards and joined the army. However, the outside world has been chaotic these past 2 years. Everyone's lives haven't been easy. Now that we're able to be self-sufficient, it's already very good. Our master is going to fight the Wudua people. Without master, how can we have a good life outside? We all miss you. If you want to come back one day, you'll still be our boss." Wang Ba felt a bit better. He snorted softly, "At least you guys have a conscience." He took out a few ingots of silver from the bag he carried with him and lined them up one by one. "This is—" someone asked cautiously. "I did a meritorious service in the barracks. It's a reward from the higher-ups." He waved his hand indifferently, "I'm eating and living in the barracks now. It's useless to keep it. You guys can take it. Buy whatever you want. Don't say that boss doesn't care about your lives." This second boss hesitated for a moment. "You exchanged this with your life. We don't dare to take it." "I told you to take it, so take it. Stop talking nonsense." Wang Ba glared at him. "You dare to talk back." Everyone looked at each other and did not dare to refute. The children at the side surrounded Wang Ba and all of them pounced on him, shouting, "Boss, you're amazing. Boss is the best." Wang Ba was squeezed until only his head was sticking out. He said angrily, "Don't step on me. Get off." When the crowd saw the commotion, they lowered their heads and laughed softly. In the shabby thatched hut, there was a rare big pot of mutton stew on the table. The 11 or 12-year-old boy was at the age when he could eat a lot. His mouth was full of oil and his cheeks were bulging. Hong Shan said, "Eat slowly. No one will fight with you." "Brother," the child looked up and said vaguely, "Next time you come back, let's eat mutton stew again." Hong Shan laughed, "Okay." The old woman next to him shook her head in disapproval. "You listen to him. What if this child is spoiled? Ah-Cheng is so obedient. How can he be spoiled?" Hong Shan smiled and touched his younger brother's head. He sighed, "Ah-Cheng is much taller now than when I left. In a few years, he'll be able to take charge." In their family, there were only a pair of brothers and an old mother. Xiao Mai and her brother were about the same age, but his younger brother was only 12 years old. Hong Shan didn't have much ability in his life. He didn't expect to enter the Liang province guards and meet a group of powerful brothers. However, he was willing to place all his beautiful hopes on his younger brother, hoping that he could bring glory to his ancestors. Aching, he looked at the young boy who was happily eating a mutton leg. When I first came to the barracks and met Mark Wuan, she was even thinner than you. But later, she became the leader of the Liang province guards. Is she really that powerful? More powerful than brother? Aching asked curiously. Hong Shan smiled. She's much more powerful than me. He looked at the young boy in front of him. She can eat as much as you. So Aching, you have to work hard when I'm not here. Maybe in the future, you can also become someone like Marquis Wuan. Marquis Wuan is a woman, I'm a man. How can I be Marquis Wuan? The young boy couldn't take it. If I want to be someone like General Feng Yun. Hong Shan and the old woman looked at each other, then lowered their heads and smiled. You can be General Feng Yun. Hong Shan smiled. Then after brother leaves, you have to focus on studying and practicing martial arts. Don't make mother angry, okay? I know. Aching patted his chest and promised, brother, don't worry. I'll take good care of mother. Ashen, the old woman looked at Hong Shan, her gaze gentle and worried. Swords have no eyes on the battlefield. You have to be careful. Hong Shan pushed a bowl of soup in front of the old woman. Don't worry, mother. I'll take good care of myself. Capital Martial Arts School. Director Jiang was having a duel with the young master, Jiang Jiao. Both of them used long spears. Curator Jiang used the long spear to perfection back then, but now his son, Jiang Jiao, had already surpassed him. Just like his name, the long spear was like a flood dragon coming out of the sea. It was beautiful and ferocious. With a horizontal strike, the tip of the spear was already at Director Jiang's neck. As the red tassels trembled slightly, the crowd burst into cheers. Good. The young master is amazing. Director Jiang lost. He has to admit that he's old. Although he lost to his son, Director Jiang didn't get angry. Instead, he showed a proud expression. Looking at the tall and straight young man in front of him, he felt a great sense of relief. Back then, Jiang Jiao's fiancée committed suicide for love. Jiang Jiao immediately became a joke and couldn't recover from the setback. He locked himself in his room every day and refused to see anyone. His family and friends came to persuade him, but it was useless. Director Jiang only had this one son. He was angry and heartbroken, but there was nothing he could do. It just so happened that the Liangzhou guards were recruiting new soldiers. He wanted to train this kid's willpower, so he forced Jiang Jiao to join the army. He didn't expect that in less than 2 years, Jiang Jiao would become a new man. He was no longer as dispirited as before, and his spear skills gradually improved. If there was one thing that Director Jiang felt fortunate about in his life, it was that day he tore down the Liangzhou guards' recruitment document and threw his stinky son into the army camp. He pretended to be reserved and said, "Your spear skills are quite exquisite." Jiang Jiao smiled and said, "It's because my friend taught me well." He Yan had taught him his spear skills. Thinking about it, he sighed. He Yan's spear skills were far above his own. If he wanted to catch up to her, he would need to put in a lot of effort. Gym Master Jiang walked into the room and took out a long stick wrapped in red cloth. It's for you," Director Jiang said. "Open it and take a look." Jiang Jiao opened it and peeled off the red cloth. Inside was a silver spear. This spear was more beautiful and sharper than the one he had brought to the Liangzhou guards. "I'm afraid that your original spear won't be enough for your trip to Jiuquan. Our martial arts center has never lacked good weapons. This spear suits your current spear skills better." Jiang Jiao casually swung the spear in his hand a few times. He found it to his liking and immediately said happily, "Thank you, father. Since you've taken the martial arts center's good spear, don't disgrace our Jiang family's reputation," Director Jiang said in a low voice. After a moment of silence, he added, "Of course, you have to protect yourself. Remember, come back alive." Jiang Jiao smiled freely and put the spear behind his back. He said straightforwardly, "Of course." The drizzle was weak. The restaurant was next to the river. An old man in a straw raincoat was fishing. He was as strong as a black bear and held a large knife in his hand. He stroked the prayer beads on his chest and looked at the restaurant in front of him with an exceptionally gentle gaze. This place used to be his home. It was also a spring day like this back then. Their house was close to the river, so they could catch a lot of fish in this season. His brothers would throw the fish carelessly into the bamboo baskets. The girls would remove the scales, clean them up, and roast them until they were fragrant. His parents were still alive back then, and the courtyard was bustling with activity every day. The carefree days seemed endless, and he also seemed like he would never grow up. In the blink of an eye, many years had passed. Things remained the same, but people had changed. His original family was long gone. The house that used to be filled with memories had become a wine shop. And he was all alone. He didn't even have anyone to say goodbye to before he left. The woman selling wine enthusiastically called out, "Big brother, do you want a bowl of apricot wine?" Huang Xiong turned his head to look. After a while, he nodded and said, "3 bowls." "Okay," the woman replied with a smile. He placed the knife on the table and waited for the woman to bring 3 bowls of sweet wine. The wine was sweet and refreshing. It wasn't expensive, but it reminded him of his mother's osmanthus wine. Huang Xiong raised his head. Under the eaves outside the window, raindrops fell drop by drop, smashing a small hole in the ground. He looked and looked, then suddenly shook his head and smiled. Actually, it was nothing. Sitting here now was like sitting in his old home. This woman's care could be considered a mother's advice. The sound of the rain outside was like the noise of younger siblings. And this knife. It was a close friend that would accompany him on his journey. The fierce man raised his head and drank the 3 bowls of wine one by one. He put down the money in his hand, got up, and strode away. Only the rain falling under the eaves was neither fast nor slow. It was exceptionally long. Today, the atmosphere in the Lin family in the capital was strangely cold. Mrs. Lin used a handkerchief to wipe her tears. Looking at the person in front of her, she sobbed, "My son, why did you have to run to G County? Do you know that there are endless wars there? You don't know martial arts. If you ran into a Yuto, what would you do? Mother only has you as my darling. If something happened to you, what would mother do?" "That's enough." Lin Mu frowned and said, "What's the point of crying? What if the servants see you like this?" Mrs. Lin didn't give up and pointed her spear at Lin Mu. "You useless thing. Go tell the emperor to let he come back. Why don't you go in his place? You've already lived for so many years. My son is still young. He's so weak, how can he go to the battlefield?" Lin Shuanghe, for the first time, he realized that when his mother cried, there were so many tears. "Mother, I asked the emperor myself. I wanted to go. Please don't blame father." Lin Shuanghe said, "This is a good time to make a contribution. Our Lin family can't only treat women. If I go and make a contribution, our Lin family will be famous in Dawei." "Who cares?" Mrs. Lin scolded. "Our family doesn't lack money." For the first time, Lin Shuanghe felt helpless when it came to women. He looked at his father. Lin Mu frowned slightly and asked, "Have you really thought it through? That's a battlefield." "Father, it's not like I haven't been to a battlefield before. Didn't I already run into a Yuto in Jiang? I was fine. You're worrying too much. My luck has always been good. Nothing will happen." "But..." Mrs. Lin still wanted to say something, but someone's voice came from behind. "Shuang He, come with me." It was Lin Qingtan. Lin Shuanghe finally found a chance to slip away. He hurriedly said, "Grandfather is calling for me." He quickly followed Lin Qingtan. When they reached the study, Lin Qingtan turned around and looked into Lin Shuanghe's eyes. He asked, "You insist on going to G County. Is it because of the plague?" Lin Shuanghe was stunned. He then smiled and said, "Grandfather is wise. Yudo had killed innocent people in G County. Corpses were piled up like mountains. When he heard that there was a plague, Lin Shuanghe volunteered to go there to deal with the plague. Have you really thought it through? The battlefield isn't like the capital. It's a place where you can lose your life at any time," Lin Qingtan said. Everyone in the capital knew that the youngest son of the Lin family was quite talented. Unfortunately, the situation was absurd and he couldn't achieve great things. Perhaps even Lin Shuanghe's father, Lin Mu, thought so too. The Lin family's hope for this junior was that he wouldn't cause any trouble for the rest of his life and live a peaceful life. That was enough. Grandfather. The young man who was always smiling showed a serious expression for the first time. If it was a peaceful time, I wouldn't be wrong to specialize in women's medicine. But the situation is urgent and the Lin family is afraid of death. They don't deserve to practice medicine. This trip to Ji County is not only to treat the people who have been infected with the plague. The injured soldiers in the army also need to be treated by military doctors. Although the battlefield is dangerous, Grandfather has taught me before. As a doctor, you must have the heart of a living person. You must not have a selfish heart. I am the young master of the Lin family. But first, I am a doctor. Lin Qingtan looked at Lin Shuanghe in front of him. His eyes flashed. After a long time, this old man revealed a gratified smile for the first time. A doctor is benevolent. You already have a benevolent heart. This is very good. Go to Ji County, he said. Dr. Lin, that is also your battlefield. Chapter 259. He Yan accompanied He Sui and He Yunxing the day before she left. When He Yunxing found out that she was going to Jiuquan, he was extremely agitated and scolded. I know you're skilled, but He Yan, that's Jiuquan. In the past, whether it was in the Rundu or Jiang, at least you didn't fight alone. You've never led an army by yourself, so how could you fight against those Yudo? Those Yudo are cunning and cruel. As soon as they broke through Jiuquan, they started to massacre the city. You're a woman if you were really captured? He Yunxing shuddered. That would be hell that was more painful than death. He Yunxing. He Sui shouted, speak properly. The young man shut his mouth, but his gaze towards He Yan was still filled with endless worry. No matter how much the new recruits of the Liangzhou guards worshipped He Yan and told him that He Yan was omnipotent, in the hearts of the He family's father and son, He Yan was always the weak little girl who clamored to buy new clothes and lipstick. When a delicate plant was moved into the wild, it was already fortunate that it could survive after being exposed to the sun and wind. How could they let this plant fight and kill, fight for its life? It was simply ridiculous. The imperial edict has already been issued, and the commander's seal is also in my hands, He Yan said helplessly. Yunxing, calm down. I haven't gone to Jiuquan yet, and you've already arranged for my defeat. If this reaches the emperor's ears, our He family will be in big trouble. He Yunxing was dumbfounded by her words. After a while, he said, isn't it all because you're trying to be brave? A real man. He Yan teased him, the country is in danger, and it needs people. How can you only think about yourself? The teachers in your academy usually don't teach you like this, right? I don't care so much, the young man gritted his teeth and said, I only care about my family. Besides, if you let me go in your place, I'll go without saying anything. What's wrong with the imperial court? There are so many men, yet they let a woman charge at the front. He Yan smiled. Yunxing, what are you talking about? Wasn't General Fei Hong, whom you admired in the past, also a woman? She patted the young man's shoulder. I didn't think too much about it, and I didn't think that I should hide behind just because I'm a woman. But because I thought I could go to war, I went. This has nothing to do with men or women. Yan. He Sui looked at her. His eyes were a little red, but he still had to look generous and carefree. Well said. Father thinks so too. You're a child with a mind of your own. Since you took the initiative to go to Jiuquan, you must have a plan in mind. Father won't stop you. Don't listen to Yunxing's nonsense. Father believes that you can definitely beat those Yudo. As he spoke, he began to choke with sobs. If He Sui wasn't too old and didn't have much talent, He Sui would have picked up his sword and rushed to the battlefield with He Yan. It would be a lie to say that he was relieved. He only had this one daughter, and he raised her like a treasure. Previously, He Yan had secretly gone to the Liangzhou guards, which made him worried for a long time. Now that they were going to face those Yudo with real swords and spears, how could he be relaxed? However, if this was the path that He Yan had decided to take as her father, the only thing he could do was to help her. Father has wondered before whether our He family would have a general in the future. But I always thought it would be Yunxing. I didn't expect it to be Yen Yen. He looked at the girl in front of him with emotion. Who would have thought that the arrogant and unrestrained girl who always clamored to buy new rouge would now become a heroine who led an army and personally went to the battlefield to fight against the enemy? He felt proud and sad at the same time. He was proud that He Sui's daughter was so outstanding that no man in the world could compare to her. He was sad because when a girl went to the battlefield, what she had to face was cruelty and darkness that no other girl had ever faced. However, if she wanted to be an eagle in the sky, then she should be allowed to fly in the sky, and not be a kite with the string in her hand. She had her own world, even if that world was far away that he, as her father, couldn't touch. Father believes that your mother will definitely protect you from the heavens, He Sui said. He Yen looked at He Sui. He Sui, this father, was tolerant and magnanimous. Even now, he was completely thinking of her. Even if his heart ached unbearably, he would never show it, and would never pretend to be a tool to tie down his daughter. How fortunate was she that they were her family. Father, don't worry, He Yen held He Sui's hand. His father's hand was broad and rough, and his fingertips were thick with calluses from years of hard work. I'll be back soon after I defeat those Yuto. She paused after each word as if she was making a promise. I'll definitely be back. The day before they left, He Yen and Xiaoju went out in the evening and sat in the carriage to Feng Lulu. Lin Shuanghe had booked the entire Feng Lulu today and invited a few friends to see them off. He was a spendthrift, and this time he was going to follow them to Ji County. He didn't know when he would be able to squander again. When they arrived at Feng Lulu, the waiter downstairs led them upstairs. When they went upstairs, only Lin Shuanghe was there. The table was filled with food and wine, and in the middle of the table was a copper pot. In the pot, mutton was boiling, and the aroma assailed their nostrils. Lin Shuanghe was talking to the beautiful zither player. They didn't know what he said, but the girl kept laughing. Brother Lin. He Yen called out to him. Lin Shuanghe turned his head and saw He Yen. His eyes lit up, and he walked over and complained, "Why did you guys come so late? I've been here for a while, and I thought you guys wouldn't be coming today." He Yen looked around. Just the three of us? Just the three of them, and they ordered such a big table. Lin Shuanghe was really a prodigal son. How could that be? I called Yen Nongguang and his wife to come over as well. In any case, we're leaving together tomorrow. Today, I'll treat it as a farewell for everyone, and also for myself. However, Lin Shuanghe waved his fan. Yen Nongguang, why are you so late? Could it be that you know you're going to the battlefield tomorrow, so you hid at home and cried today? Lin Shuanghe, who are you scolding? Who's hiding at home and crying? As they were talking, someone's voice came from outside. They turned their heads and saw Yen He supporting Xia Qingxiu as they walked in. He glared at Lin Shuanghe. Who's the coward here? Didn't you invite us here today to build a good relationship with me, so that I can protect you when we get to Ji County, so that you won't be killed by those Yudo? He sneered. Don't think I can't tell. He Yen noticed that Xia Qingxiu was being supported by Yen He. He asked with concern, Miss Qingxiu, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Although she should be calling Xia Qingxiu Madam Yen, He Yen still preferred to call her Miss Qingxiu. Xia Qingxiu was gentle and patient. It was hard to imagine how she ended up as husband and wife with Yen He, who had such a bad temper. Xia Qingxiu was a little embarrassed. He was about to speak when Yen He interrupted. He wanted to show off, but he didn't want to be too direct. He pretended to be calm and said, "It's nothing. It's just that she's pregnant now, so she should be more careful." Pregnant? He Yen was stunned. Lin Shuanghe said excitedly, Madame Yen is pregnant? Come, let me take a look. He reached out to grab Xia Qingxiu's hand. Yen He slapped his hand away and stood in front of Xia Qingxiu. He said angrily, "What are you doing?" "I'm taking Madame Yan's pulse," Lin Shuanghe said. "I'm the white cloth divine physician, and I specialize in treating women. Let me see how Madame Yan's fetus is." "Get lost," Yen He kicked him. "I've already seen the imperial physician in the palace. She's doing very well. You don't have to worry about her." "Madame Yen, look at him." Lin Shuanghe held his fan tightly and said in a low voice, "You have to take care of him." Xia Qingxiu smiled and shook his head. Yan He's gaze fell on He Yan. He Yan was puzzled. He looked at Xiao Ju, who was sitting at the table, and suddenly said proudly, "Xiao Huaijin, I'm going to be a father." "I heard that," Xiao Ju replied coldly. "I'm going to be a father before you." Yan He emphasized, "I'm going to be a father before you." He Yan he must have been a gamer in his previous life. What was there to compare? Furthermore, she and Xiao Ju had only been married for a short time. Yan He had been married for a long time. How could they be compared? The competition was simply too unfair. He Yan was thinking when Xiao Ju suddenly looked up and glanced at him. He Yan? The next moment, second young master Xiao said slowly, "Who told you that you're going to be a father before me?" Yan He's smile froze. "What do you mean? Your son isn't even born yet. My daughter can already recite books." He stared at the teacup in his hand and smiled slightly. Lin Shuanghe spat out a mouthful of tea. He Yan, was Xiao Ju talking about the time when she was drunk and asked Xiao Ju to recite a book to him when they were in the Liang province guards? Lin Shuanghe covered his face with his fan and said, Yes. Huaijin is going to be a father before you. I can testify to this. It's true. My daughter is so obedient. She can recite everything. How is that possible? Yan He panicked when he heard this. He rushed forward and questioned, "She can even recite books? Your illegitimate daughter? Xiao Huaijin, you actually have an illegitimate daughter. When did this happen? Wow, everyone says that you're arrogant and look down on everyone. I didn't expect you to be such a despicable and shameless person. And you..." He looked at He Yan with disappointment and scolded, "You look like a hero who kills enemies on the battlefield. How can you tolerate this? Why didn't you use a knife to chop off this bastard's head?" He Yan, are you afraid that the Xiao family will oppress you? Yan He's eyes narrowed and waved his hand, "I'll support you. Tomorrow we'll divorce." Xiao Ju frowned slightly. "Yan Nangguang," he said calmly, "I don't want to fight today." "Who's afraid of you?" Yan He rolled up his sleeves eagerly when he heard this. "Bring it on." "Nangguang." Xia Qingxiu shook his head disapprovingly and said softly, "Young Master Lin is treating us today. How can we fight? Besides, Military Governor Xiao was joking with you. Why do you take it seriously?" When Xia Qingxiu said this, Yan He immediately became listless and said, "The mutton is cooked. Let's sit down and eat." Lin Shuanghe asked them to sit down. When they sat down, he nudged Xiao Ju with his arm and said softly, "Huaijin, you're really good." Xiao Ju couldn't be bothered with him. Lin Shuanghe treated the Lin family's money like water. He always ordered the most expensive dishes. A table of dishes cost a table of silver. However, you get what you pay for. Feng Lu restaurant's dishes were the best in the capital. He Yan originally thought that even though Yan He was henpecked, he was still a general and would be careless. He didn't expect Yan He to be able to impress him this time. Xia Qingxiu remembered what he could eat and what he couldn't drink better than anyone else. He Yan guessed that the servants in the palace who served the imperial concubines were probably at this level. As he served Xia Qingxiu, he said, "Hey, do you guys know Yang Mingji?" When Xiao Ju heard this name, she didn't react. Instead, Lin Shuanghe paused and asked, "What's wrong?" It wasn't like that before. Yan He lowered his voice. Guang Yan agreed to open a market in Dowei for the Yudo. As the governor of Jinling, Yang Mingji opposed it and almost lost his position. I don't know what happened, but I heard that the Yang family had a falling out with him because of this. He Yan glanced at Xiao Ju and asked, "What happened after that?" After the emperor ascended the throne, he appreciated his actions. He also saw that when he was in Jinling, he was clean and had outstanding achievements. He wanted to transfer him back to Shuojing, but he was rejected by Yang Mingji. "Don't look at me, I don't know why he refused." Yan He shrugged. "Even though he is in Jinling now, I think that the emperor admires him. He will return to Shuojing sooner or later. The Yang family must be regretting it now. Why didn't I see that old man Yang was this kind of person?" No one answered him at the table. "What happened to you guys before?" Yan He was very curious about Yang Mingji. He asked Xiao Ju, What kind of hatred can be so far away? How many years have passed and you still remember it? Xiao Huijin, he said, as a man, you should be magnanimous. What kind of man are you if you are so petty? Shut up, Lin Shuanghe rolled his eyes at him. I think you are the most petty person at this table. I didn't part ways with my close friend. Forget it, Lin Shuanghe said disdainfully. Do you have a close friend? Lin Shuanghe. He Yen picked up a piece of radish and put it in Xiao Ju's bowl. When second young master Xiao was not in the military camp, as long as he ate outside, he would eat vegetables. He probably minded that others did not clean it well. He Yen felt that he was too particular, but, forget it, everyone had their own habits. She interrupted Yen He and tried to change the topic. Miss Qingxiu, do you want the child in your belly to be a young master or a young lady? Xia Qingxiu smiled. She couldn't be considered an outstanding beauty, but she had her own gentle charm. She said, young master or young miss, I like them both. He Yen asked Yen He, what about General's Yen? I don't care if it is a young master or young lady. As long as it is my wife's child, of course I like it. Once Yen He mentioned his unborn child, his tail was about to reach the sky. He said proudly, if it is someone else's child, whether it is a young master or young lady, I will hate it. He Yen, this person was really arrogant. He did not know how other people's children had offended him. Lin Shuanghe also asked Xia Qingxiu, sister-in-law, have you named the child? This. Xia Qingxiu showed a troubled expression. I have my own ideas, Yen He interrupted. If it is a daughter, then she will be called Yen Muxia. He Yen. Is this the meaning of admiring Miss Qingxiu? I couldn't tell that you didn't know anything about poetry, but now you are quite smart. Yen He said proudly, how is it? Do you think that I am good at naming? He Yen did not know how to respond. Yen He probably did not realize that although it was a good thing that he loved his wife, every time he proudly showed off his love for his wife, he seemed a little, no, he was exceptionally stupid. You are really good at naming. He Yen was very supportive. Then what if it is a boy? Yen He showed a lack of interest. Then he will be called General Yen Liang. I hope that when he grows up, he can also be a general as outstanding as his father. What kind of person is this? Lin Shuanghe mocked. Even at this time, he still doesn't forget to put gold on his face. Lin Shuanghe. Yen He said angrily, when you go to Ji County, do you still want to live? Yes, yes. Lin Shuanghe cupped his hands. I hope that General's Yen will save this young master's worthless life when the time comes. Only then was Yen He satisfied. He Yen bit into a lamb leg and asked, however, Brother Lin, you going to Ji County is really out of my expectations. I thought that even if you were to go to the battlefield, you would go to Yunzi or Jiuquan. If he went to Yunzi, he could go with Xiao Ju. If he went to Jiuquan, he would be with her. It was not that he was boasting. Speaking of which, Lin Shuanghe's relationship with her or Xiao Ju was obviously better than He Yen. However, she later understood that there was a plague in Ji County right now. If Lin Shuanghe wanted to go to Ji County, it must be because of the plague. Mimi, Lin Shuanghe had called her sister-in-law a few times before, but in the end, he felt awkward and called her Mimi in the end. He said, I know the abilities of you and Huijin. With me or without me, there is not much difference. General's Yen is different. If I am not present, what if he gets injured and there is no godly doctor to treat him? What will happen if the war is delayed? His relations with people are very bad. If those military doctors take the opportunity to poison his medicine, tsk, how tragic. Yen He was furious. Lin Shuanghe, I think that nothing good comes out of your filthy mouth. How could I get injured? This is ridiculous. Let me tell you in the future, don't beg me to save you. Get lost. He Yen knew that Lin Shuanghe was just spouting nonsense. He looked like a playboy, but in fact, he had a lot of ideas in his mind. How could a man raised by the Shuajing's Lin family be afraid of death? He Yen raised the cup in her hand. Because they had to set off tomorrow, she did not dare to get drunk today. She only switched to sweet rice wine. She said, Miss Yuxian gave us a jar of bifang wine earlier, but let's not drink it today. After we defeat those Yudo, we will come to Feng Lulu and ask Brother Lin to prepare a table of good dishes for us. Then, we will not waste the wine. For now, let's just make do with this rice wine. Let's hope that we can defeat the enemy and win every battle. Let's hope that we can return victorious. What do you think? Good. Lin Shuanghe was the first to clap. Xiao Ju glanced at her and smiled. The 5 cups collided in the air and made a crisp sound. It was like the sound of weapons clashing. It was also like the sound of a horn announcing victory. Cheers. Chapter 260. All good things must come to an end. It was late at night. Feng Lulu was only left with a mess of cups and plates. The young people had already dispersed, fighting for the last bit of warmth. In the room, a beautiful woman was folding clothes one by one and putting them into a bundle. A man who walked into the room saw her and snatched it away. Qingxiu, I told you not to do these things. Yanhe pulled her to sit in front of the couch. You are pregnant now. You should be more careful. What if you get tired? Xia Qingxiu said, I am only pregnant. Why do you have to make it sound so serious? You are pregnant and you are not serious? Yanhe made a fuss about nothing. Anyway, there are servants to do these chores. You just have to take care of yourself. Xia Qingxiu was silent. I just remembered that you did not have time to wear 2 sets of new clothes. This time, I will bring them for you. Yanhe rarely returned to the capital these 2 years. Sometimes, he would leave the capital before he could wear the new clothes that Xia Qingxiu prepared for him. I am going to war. There is no need to dress so nicely. Yanhe said without thinking, there is no need to bring so much. Xia Qingxiu was silent. Her silence made Yanhe panic. Every time before he went to war, he was most afraid of Xia Qingxiu's silence. Xia Qingxiu's daughter was gentle and strong. When Yanhe was young, he had seen his family members cry for him to stay when he went to war. Even his own mother was like this. However, Xia Qingxiu was never like this. At most, he would be silent like this. However, this silence made him feel even more guilty and pity. As a general, when the country was in trouble, he would not shirk his duty. He had lived until now and was worthy of being the ruler of heaven and earth. The only thing he owed was his wife and children. Yanhe hesitated for a moment. He pulled Xia Qingxiu into his arms and sighed softly, Qingxiu, I have wronged you. Xia Qingxiu was stunned for a moment before she smiled. What grievance is this? You went to Ji County in order to protect the Great Ways territory. Wasn't I able to live peacefully in the capital also because of your protection? But Yanhe frowned. When you were pregnant, I couldn't be by your side. Being able to have a child with Xia Qingxiu was something to be happy about, but it also came with regret, disappointment, worry, and guilt. Since I married you, of course, I already expected this day to come. Xia Qingxiu smiled. The situation is critical. Even if you're not in Shuajing, the little guy will understand. Yanhe looked at Xia Qingxiu's lower abdomen and covered it with his palm. He murmured, I don't know if it's the young master or the young lady. When I heard what you said at Fengla restaurant today, I thought you didn't care. Xia Qingxiu chuckled. I don't care whether it's a boy or a girl. After all, it's my blood. If it's really a son, do you really want him to be a general like you? Xia Qingxiu asked. Yanhe thought for a moment. I do want him to be a general, but if he doesn't like it and wants to be something else, that's fine. Besides, if our Muxia wants to learn martial arts, that's not a problem. My classmate, General Fei Hong, was also a girl. If our Muxia wants to be the second General Fei Hong, as her father, I will definitely support her. However, I'm much better than the father of the He family. I will definitely teach her everything I know and let her surpass General Fei Hong. Xia Qingxiu stared at him and nodded. I understand. You still like the young lady. Seeing that he was exposed, Yanhe was not angry. He said, that's right. Xia Qingxiu couldn't help but laugh. After laughing, he leaned his head on Yanhe's shoulder and said softly, I'm saying if, when Muxia is born, it'll be good to have you by her side. Yanhe was stunned. Once the war started, no one could say for sure when it would end. Maybe they could make it in time, maybe they couldn't. He held Xia Qingxiu's hand. I'll try my best. Qingxiu, I also want to see our child being born. The night in Shuo City didn't seem to be as cold as before. The heater in the room was removed. He Yan took a bath and went to the bedroom. He saw Xiaoju sitting in front of the table, wiping her sword. She held drinking autumn in her hand. It didn't look like a sword, but more like a rare treasure. It was hard to imagine that such a beautiful sword could be so sharp on the battlefield that it could cut the enemy's golden sword and split the enemy's arrow in half. He used a silk cloth to wipe away the last specks of dust on the tip of the sword. Just as he put the sword back into its scabbard, he saw another sword in front of him. It was accompanied by the laughter of the person beside him. Military Governor Xiao, help me wipe it too. Xiao Ju glanced at her. He Yan looked at him with a grin. After a moment, he silently took the sword, pulled it out, and really began to help her wipe it. He Yan sat down in front of the table. Qing Lang and Drinking Autumn were two completely different swords. It was reasonable to say that a woman's sword should be light and agile. However, Qing Lang was very heavy. Even if a man held it, it wouldn't be easy. The body of the sword was green and simple. At first glance, it looked very ordinary. However, upon closer inspection, it was very different. It was just like the owner of the sword. He Yan rested his chin on his hand as he looked at the young man in front of him. He had also just taken a bath and was only wearing a jade-colored inner garment with a casual outer garment. His attire was not very proper. He was originally a lazy beauty, but he had to meticulously wipe his sword. Thus, there was a bit of austere coldness mixed together, and it made people unable to move their eyes away. Xiaoju noticed He Yan's gaze and asked, "What are you looking at?" "I'm thinking." He Yan didn't hide anything. "Your face is indeed worthy of the title Jade Face Commander." For a general to look like this, it was an insult to the other generals. Xiaoju's mouth twitched. It was very strange. He didn't like others to talk about his appearance. Judging a person by appearance was a superficial thing. However, whenever He Yan directly praised his appearance, he didn't feel disgusted. In fact, he even enjoyed it. Sometimes, Xiaoju would reflect on himself and wonder if he had become superficial. That was why he was happy. He Yan waited for him to finish wiping the sword. Then, he put the sword back into the scabbard and stood up to hang the two swords on the wall. As soon as Xiaoju finished hanging the swords, he was hugged from behind. He Yan loved hugging him like this. It was like a child clinging to an adult. Perhaps it was because she was too short, or perhaps it wasn't because He Yan was short, but because Xiaoju was too tall. In any case, every time she hugged Xiaoju's waist, her expression would be filled with pure happiness. This happiness would make people feel warm in their hearts. Heroine, the young man stood motionless. His voice carried a hint of mockery. "Are you going to strangle me to death?" Her disapproving voice came from behind. "I haven't even used my strength yet. Military Governor Xiao, why are you so weak?" Then she reached out and touched his waist. "Xiaoju." He Yan touched the sachet on his waist and pulled it over. She held it in her hand and said, "Xiaoju, is this how you advertise my needlework?" Xiaoju turned around and looked at the sachet in her hand. She raised her eyebrows slightly. "That seems to be mine." He Yan was speechless. She didn't notice it at first. However, when she left today, Lin Shuang has said to her, "Sister He, what's with that ugly sachet on Huaijin? He's the second son of a Shao family. It's really unsightly for him to wear such an ugly accessory. Since you're his wife, you should pay attention to it occasionally." He Yan paid attention to it. It was fine if she didn't, but once she did, she felt both angry and amused. Previously, Bai Rongwei had given Xiaoju a protective talisman. The protective talisman was placed in a sachet. At that time, out of some secret thoughts, He Yan had embroidered a moon in the sachet. To be honest, the moon was not very beautiful. However, it was still a token of her goodwill. Now, it seemed that Xiaoju had discovered the secret. However, even if she discovered it, why did she flip the sachet upside down and show the embroidered side? Anyone who saw it would only think that it was an ugly sachet. You didn't tell them that I embroidered it, right? He Yen asked nervously. It's so ugly. I definitely didn't embroider it. Xiao Ju laughed. Oh, I only told them that it was my wife who embroidered it. He Yan's heart turned to ashes. She returned the sachet to Xiao Ju. It's fine. You've already embarrassed yourself. However, don't you think that it's ugly when you wear it? This was like the elegant Prince Lin Shuanghe holding an iron hoe as a decoration. Ugliness was secondary. The main thing was that it didn't match. Is it? Xiao Ju fastened the sachet to the button of her outer garment. I think it's not bad. He Yen thought to himself, could it be that being blind is contagious? He turned around and looked at He Yen. When we arrived at Yunzi, when I saw it, it felt like I was looking at you. He Yen, are you trying to say that I'm ugly? He was stunned for a moment. Then, he laughed and said leisurely, your way of thinking is always different from ordinary people. He Yen also laughed. How was she different from ordinary people? It was just that she didn't want to make the atmosphere sad. People were always especially vulnerable and sad when they were about to leave. However, she didn't want to. If she knew that her goal was in front of her and she knew where she was going, then she would take big steps forward and walk forward confidently. The so-called weakness was the other side of the armor. Xiao Ju, can you promise me something? She asked. What is it? Jiuchuan and Yunzi are not in the same direction. When the war starts, it will take time for news to reach each other. I used to be alone and didn't have any worries. However, you and I are husband and wife now. I want you to promise me that if there's news, no matter what it is, you will do what you have to do. Don't affect the overall situation and don't stop. She looked at the man in front of her. Continue to walk forward. No one could guarantee the outcome of the war. This was the first time she was going to war with her sweetheart. A person couldn't be distracted. When a general was on the battlefield, all his energy could only be used on the battlefield in front of him and the enemy. Every time he was distracted, it was a big taboo. At that time, the so-called husband, son, father, these titles all had to be cast aside. On the battlefield, if it wasn't a soldier, then it was a general. That was all. Of course, she was the same. This sentence also applies to me, He Yen said. No matter what I encounter, no matter what I hear, I will lead my troops forward. I won't retreat or stop for anything. The girl's eyes were bright and seemed to be a little apologetic. She hesitated for a moment. You might think that I'm very heartless. I promise you, Xiao Ju interrupted her. He Yen was stunned. Xiao Ju said, you also have to promise me one thing. What is it? He leaned over slightly and gently kissed He Yan's forehead. Come back alive. The early spring sun shone on the newly cut window flowers. The sun was cut into small beams of light that sprinkled on the ground in the courtyard. A tall imperial bodyguard walked in from outside with a bundle in his hand. They were about to leave the capital for war. The original imperial bodyguard should also return to the Nine Flags camp and follow them to Yunzi. A petite figure was sweeping the courtyard. Qi Wu stood behind the girl. He hesitated for a moment, not knowing if he should call out to her. Logically speaking, he had stayed at the He family for a period of time. Although he didn't do much and did almost nothing to help He Yan's personal maid, Qing Mei, had a good relationship with him. At one point, Qi Wu even thought that he had a pretty good relationship with Qing Mei. After all, this was the first time in his life that he had been ordered around by a woman. Perhaps it was because of Qing Mei's matter-of-fact attitude that even he was affected. After a long time, Qi Wu also began to think that this was how it should be. However, after He Yen married into a Xiao family, Qing Mei avoided him as soon as she saw him, as if he was the god of plague. Qi Wu was very puzzled, but it wasn't good for him to drag a little girl to ask for an explanation. In addition, there were too many things that happened after that, so he didn't see Qing Mei many times. However, after leaving today, he probably wouldn't see this little servant girl for a long time. Qi Wu hesitated whether he should go forward to greet her as a farewell. Before he could decide, Qing Mei turned her head. When she saw Qi Wu, she was surprised and said, Imperial bodyguard Qi Wu? I'm leaving. Qi Wu scratched his head. I just happened to pass by. After saying this, he didn't know what else to say and planned to turn and leave. Wait. Qing Mei called out to him. She took a cloth bag from the stone table next to her and stuffed it into Qi Wu's arms. You came at the right time. If you didn't come, I could only have young madam give it to you. What is this? Qi Wu was surprised. Young madam said that Yunzi is close to the sea and is very humid. I made a pair of boots. The soles are a bit hard and waterproof. My craftsmanship isn't very good, so you'll have to make do with it. She emphasized, consider it a reward for helping me sweep the courtyard earlier. Boots? Qi Wu lowered his head to look at the cloth bag in his arms. His mood was a bit strange. Qing Mei saw that he was still standing there and said with her hands on her hips, You're still not leaving? Aren't you afraid that young master will order you to serve him if you're late? Qi Wu finally regained his senses. He hesitated for a moment, then said, Many thanks. He turned and was about to leave. Qing Mei called out to him again, Hey! Is there anything else? Qi Wu asked. She grabbed the broom next to her and turned to walk into the courtyard. As she walked, she said, Knives and arrows don't have eyes. You be careful. Qi Wu looked at her back and coughed lightly. It seemed that he wanted to laugh, but he held it back. He stuffed the cloth bag into his arms and strode away. Outside the city gates, it was already crowded with commoners who came to watch the commotion. Their family members had already come to send them off. Besides Xiao Jing, Bai Rongwei grabbed He Yan's hand and repeatedly reminded her to be careful. She then carefully placed a safety talisman in her hand and said, This was consecrated by the master of Yu Hua Temple. He asked for a total of 2. One is for you, and the other is for Huaijin. She said, I know that you have a righteous heart, but you also have to protect yourself. He Yan hung the safety talisman and the black jade at his waist together. He smiled and said, I know, eldest sister-in-law. Yen, don't worry and go to Jiuchuan. Father will wait for you at home. He Sui waved at her heroically. He wanted to put on a confident and magnanimous appearance, but his eyes unconsciously turned red. He Yan's eyes also became a little wet. He Yunxing didn't say anything, but when He Yan walked in front of him, he finally couldn't help but remind her, He Yan, you better do what you said. I know. He Yan hurriedly nodded. I will definitely come back alive. Don't worry. She patted He Yunxing's head again. When I'm not here, I'll leave the He family in your care, Yunxing. He Yunxing said, Don't worry. These 3 words were spoken in a powerful and resonant manner. He Yan couldn't describe what she was feeling. Every time she went to the battlefield in her previous life, she was always alone. Now that she had so many ties, she didn't feel restrained. Instead, she was filled with strength. He Xining also came today. She hid in the crowd and was discovered by He Yan. She hesitated for a moment, then stood out and handed the cloth bag in her hand to He Yan. He Xining said, You're a woman. It's inconvenient for you to do everything in the army. Here are some clothes and small things that I personally made. You can use them. He Yan smiled. Thank you, Xining. You're so thoughtful. He Xining pursed her lips. You're going to the battlefield. This is all I can do for you. She called out softly, Sister, you must come back safe and sound. He Yan winked at her. Don't worry. When I come back, I'll use my military merits to exchange for rewards. I'll buy you the most beautiful jewelry. He Xining was amused by her words. On the other side, Yan He urged at the city gate. Marquis Wuan, what are you waiting for? Let's go. I'm coming. He Yan said as he walked over and got on his horse. Xiao Ju was beside him. She was dressed in martial attire and had a long sword at her waist. She rode beside him. Xia Qingxiu was supported by a maid. He watched as the soldiers and horses left the city. When they could no longer be seen, he gently stroked his lower abdomen and muttered, Muxia, quickly say goodbye to your father. Cheng Lisu ran out with his family behind his back. At this moment, he was hiding in the crowd. He asked Song Taotao, who had also sneaked out, When do you think they will come back? The little girl was not annoyed by his question. She only said, I don't know. After a while, she slowly continued, "But I hope that every one of them can come back." The city gate was wide open. Under the sunlight, the wind caused the grass and trees to sway slightly. The soldiers and horses moved forward, like a winding dragon, fearlessly rushing to the battlefield. The banners fluttered in the wind. Chapter 261. It was almost the Qingming festival, and it had been raining for days. The rain in the capital had washed the ground clean, and everywhere was lush with life. It had been more than a month since Dewey's soldiers left the capital. Jiuquan was an endless desert. Lady He, the young deputy general, walked into the tent and said to the female official who was drawing on the ground, "I have already instructed them to reduce the number of camps." He Yan smiled, "Thank you." The deputy general looked at the woman in front of him and felt a little emotional. When the Fuyue army that followed General Fei Hong found out that the leader was a young woman, they were unwilling. They could not be blamed for being picky. After following General Fei Hong of Dewey, they could not help but compare themselves to other generals. He Yan, as a woman, daring to go on the battlefield was admirable. However, in reality, she had never led an army on her own before, and they did not know how skilled she was. Even though she had won the battle against Jiang in the Rundu, she had the right army's commander-in-chief with her. Now, she was alone. Fighting a war was different from a simple martial arts competition. Emperor Zhaokong did this because he was the right army's commander-in-chief. However, within the Fuyue army, they were not truly convinced. In this month, they had only arrived near Jiuquan. Jiuquan was originally a city in the desert, and it was now occupied by Yuto. When He Yan arrived at Jiuquan, she was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, she set up camp near Jiuquan. For the next few days, the soldiers had already started to complain. However, the deputy general knew that things were not as they seemed. He had been in the Fuyue army before, and although he did not have close contact with General Fei Hong, he knew that General Fei Hong dared to take risks. The woman in front of him had not shown her valiant side, but she was more rational and calm. The location of the camp was chosen just right. This location could be used to attack and defend. If there was any movement, it would be easier for them to adjust and retreat. The deputy general was puzzled. He had heard that this was He Yan's first time in Jiuquan, but he seemed to be very familiar with the terrain and had a lot of experience in surviving in the desert. Of course, he had no idea that He Yan was General Fei Hong in the past, and that General Fei Hong had first joined the Fuyue army to fight against the Western Chang people in Mo County. Mo County was not far from Jiuquan and the terrain was similar. "Sir." The deputy general's gaze fell on the long scroll in front of He Yan. "Are you drawing a map?" These Yudo troops are abundant, and they have been plotting for a long time. Although the Fuyue army trains every day, they haven't been on the battlefield for several years. In addition, they suffered heavy losses in the Battle of Huayuan, so their troops are inferior to their opponents. I can't rashly attack and disregard the lives of these soldiers. Before this, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Every day, she asked Shi Tu, Wang Ba, and the others to scout around Jiuquan City from afar. They didn't have to go too close, and after they were familiar with the terrain, she would go deeper. After a few days, she finally drew a complete map. With this map, the Fuyue army, which was originally inferior to the Yuto in terms of numbers, would be able to unleash their full potential. However, He Yan sighed in her heart. She knew that the Yuto had rested for many years and would definitely have abundant military equipment. However, when she arrived in Jiuquan, she realized that the Yudo's troops were much stronger than she had imagined. If it was only Jiuquan, it would be fine. If the other three places were also like this battle for the Dewey would be really difficult. For so many years, Emperor Wenxian valued the civil and despised the military. The Dewey's troops had stagnated, and the Yudo had gained the upper hand. It seemed that the Huayuan, Rundu, and even Jiang were all just a pretense. The Yudo didn't show their true military strength. Their goal was to make them lower their guard. That made sense. If it wasn't for that, how could these four cities have fallen so quickly? "Milord, you have to take care of your health." The deputy general thought for a while and reminded her, "Milord, you haven't slept much these few days? It's fine. I know what to do," Hien continued without raising her head. Seeing her like this, the deputy general didn't say anything else. He bowed and left. After he left, someone called from outside, "Milord Hien, come in." Jiang Jiao and Shirtu came in. Like the other soldiers, they called Hien Milord He. After all, Hien hadn't been made a general yet. But in private, they still liked to call Hien Brother He. The two of them were careful and steady in their work. In the current Fuyue army, He Rufei had single-handedly wiped out the elites. There weren't many people who could be trusted. Hien left some important matters to Shirtu and the others. She raised her head and looked at the two people who were approaching her. She asked, "Did you find any movements from the Yudo?" Jiang Jiao replied, "There was a group of Yudo that went out of the city last night to scout, but they didn't come close to our tent. They only looked around and left. We followed Brother He's instructions and didn't chase after them. But in the past 2 days, there hasn't been any movement." He asked, "Brother He, do we continue to wait?" "Wait," Hien said in a low voice. "We won't take the initiative to attack the city. We'll let them chase after us." "Lure the enemy?" Jiang Jiao was startled. "But if they really take the initiative to attack us, won't we be at a disadvantage? After all, the Yudo have more soldiers than we do." "Don't worry," Hien smiled. "Those Yudo are cunning and suspicious. They definitely won't let all of their soldiers leave the city. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to camp here for so many days and still be safe and sound. They sent scouts out at night to scout the situation. It's nothing more than trying to find out more about us." Hien stood up and walked to the wooden tray in the tent. There were many small hills piled up with sand. Next to the hills were marks made with grains of rice. She picked up a branch and pointed at it for the two people to see. "Moreover, the place where we're camping is a gorge. The Yudo are afraid that we'll set up an ambush on the road behind us. Of course, they won't dare to act rashly. Previously, I fought with the Yudo in Jiang and Rundu. If Maka and Huayat's people sent word back to the Yudo leader of Jiuchuan should have heard of my name. But he can't be sure if I can really lead troops. He looks down on me, but because of what happened in Rundu and Jiang, he doesn't dare to look down on me. Guess what he'll do?" "Do what?" Jiang Jiao didn't understand. "He'll find a way to prove that I'm not capable. After he finds evidence, he'll look down on me with reason." Hien smiled. "Although I don't quite understand why the Yudo's generals are always like this, since they want to see a woman who only has a name but doesn't actually know how to lead troops, then I'll show them what they want to see." So, Shirtu, who had been silent all this time, suddenly brightened up. "Those military camps. If we camp here for a few days and don't make any moves, the Yudo will suspect that we're up to something, so they'll send troops out to investigate at night. If I were the Yudo, I'd definitely think that it must be because the other side's leader is a woman. My subordinates aren't convinced, and they're afraid of the Yudo soldiers in Jiuchuan, so many of them deserted. That's why they underestimated the enemy. When they let down their guard and lead their troops deeper in, then we can set up an ambush." Jiang Jiao was excited at first, but then he thought of something and said hesitantly, "But Brother He, didn't you say that the Yudo is cunning and suspicious, so they definitely won't send all their troops out of the city?" "Yes," Hien looked at him. "So the troops they've sent out should only be a portion. What we need to annihilate is also only this portion. If they really dare to attack with all their troops, we'll be at a disadvantage. Haven't you thought of wiping them out in one fell swoop?" Shirtu was a little confused. Hien patted his shoulder. "You haven't been to a real battlefield, so you don't know that a real war can't be ended overnight. The Yudo are much better than us in terms of troops, so we shouldn't use our weakness to attack their strength. I never planned to fight them head-on. Luring them deep in and wiping out a portion of the enemy's troops will be enough to damage the morale of the Yudo. After that, we'll slowly plan our next move. If you want to win a war, you must be patient and calm. Only then can you walk to the end." Hien smiled. "This is just the beginning." Jiang Jiao and Stone looked at the armored woman in front of them. In the past, when they were in the Liang Province Guards, they already knew that her skills were exceptional and her wisdom was unparalleled. However, now that she stood here, leading an army, unhurriedly spreading out a net, only then did they slowly and truly understand her abilities. "Brother He," Jiang Jiao joked. "You've only participated in the Battle of Jiang once more than us. Why do you seem so familiar with it?" "That's not the same." The woman's lips curled up. "I was born to fight." A gust of wind blew from outside, causing yellow sand to fly everywhere in the desert. As the banners fluttered in the wind, the atmosphere became even more desolate. Sure Tu muttered, "Ji County isn't far from here. I wonder how General Yan is doing?" "Ji County?" He Yan's gaze became heavy. He heard that the plague there had already spread. Piles of corpses were piled up in the fields outside the city and beside the river. A group of soldiers was digging a very deep hole. Looking inside, one could see corpses wrapped in white cloth. They were already emitting a rotten smell. At first glance, it looked like hell on earth. There was a hut made of straw, and the ground was covered with coarse cloth. Dozens of people were lying flat on the ground. These people were dying, and their bodies showed signs of festering. A young man was brewing medicine at the side, stirring the herbs in the giant vat with a large metal ladle. His body was not very strong, and it was already very strenuous for him to stir the medicinal herbs in this huge vat. Not long after, beads of sweat had already seeped out of his forehead. However, from the beginning to the end, he did not have any intention of slacking off. His snow-white robes had long been soaked in mud and blood. His hand, which had always held a folding fan, was now either holding silver needles to treat illnesses or a bowl of life-saving medicine. The plague in Ji County was more serious than expected. After the Yudo took over Ji County, they massacred civilians and abducted women. A large number of corpses were casually thrown into the river. It was also spring, and the plague soon broke out. The Yudo directly chased out all the Dawei civilians who were still alive, leaving them to fend for themselves. When Lin Shuanghe and Yan He arrived at Ji County, the fields outside the city were filled with corpses. Lin Shuanghe thought that as a doctor, he was used to seeing death. However, when he first arrived, he could not help but be shocked by the tragedy. Yan He's troops were used to deal with the Yudo. There were not many military doctors here. He was the grandson of Lin Shuanghe. Originally, everyone advised him not to personally come into contact with these sick people. If he was infected by the plague. However, Lin Shuanghe did not listen to these kind advice. If he was afraid of death, he would not have chosen to come here in the first place. The dead civilians could not be buried on the spot. They could only be cremated. After turning into white bones, they were buried in a deep pit. This was already the best method. Even so, they could still hear the cries of their family members who were still alive every day. He scooped the medicinal soup into a broken bowl and left it to dry. When it was slightly cooler, he brought it to the straw shed and fed it to the patients. He was originally a very particular young master. He always had some vanity. Even when he treated female patients in Shuo City, he would smile brightly when he saw cute and well-dressed women. But now, the patients here had a strange smell on them. They were dirty and hideous, but he did not dislike them at all. The patient that Lin Shuanghe helped up was a woman. She should still be very young. Her appearance was average, even a little too plump. Lin Shuanghe scooped up a spoonful of medicinal soup and brought it to her lips. She carefully drank it. Looking at the gentle and handsome young master in front of her, she blushed slightly. Even the pain in her body seemed to lessen. "Dr. Lin, I can do it myself," she said in a small voice. "That won't do," Lin Shuanghe said sternly. "How can I let a beautiful lady drink the medicine herself? I am a gentleman who has tender feelings for the fairer sex." The patients in the straw shed heard this and smiled kindly. This Dr. Lin was good-looking and had a good temperament. He was different from the stern and fierce general. He was always smiling. He was also in the mood to joke with everyone. He talked about everything under the sky. Even though they might not be able to see the next morning, even though it was such a tense and sad moment, his attitude never changed. Therefore, with him around, the atmosphere was much more relaxed. It was as if nothing was different from before. It was as if when they woke up, G County would still be the same G County and everything would be solved. After feeding all the medicine in the straw shed to the patients, Lin Shuanghe told them to rest well. Only then did he pick up all the bowls. He rinsed the bowl of medicine with boiling water before stopping. He rubbed his shoulders and finally had the chance to examine himself. However, when he looked at the stains on his body, he stared blankly for a while before giving up. It was because the white robes he brought were all cut into cloth to bandage the wounds of the patients. Now, this was the last piece of clothing. There were no other white robes to replace it. Lin Shuanghe walked to the other side. The soldiers that Yan He brought had fought with the Yudo a few times. There were victories and defeats. The terrain outside G County City was complicated. The Yudo were in the city and it was easy to defend. The battle was at a stalemate. Fortunately, Yan He himself was not affected by this matter. He seemed to be in good spirits and his morale was high. Moreover, the plague was now slightly under control. The panic did not continue to spread. Even though this battle would not be easy to win for the time being, things were moving in a good direction. In last night's surprise attack, Great Wei had won a small victory. There were many new wounded soldiers and some soldiers who died in battle. The soldiers who died in battle were buried on the spot. Lin Shuanghe let the other military doctors treat the wounded soldiers first. He himself took over the most dangerous plague patients. At this moment, he saw a few lightly injured soldiers sitting and talking by the river in front of the tent. Yan He was sitting on the ground, drinking water from his mouth without any care for his image. Lin Shuanghe dragged his tired feet and walked over. He spread his hands in front of Yan He. Yan He was confused. He slapped his hand away. "What are you doing?" "Generals Yan," Lin Shuanghe licked his lips. "I was busy treating the patients until now. You didn't even leave me a bowl of wild vegetable soup. I'm starving to death. You should at least give me something to eat." Yan He rolled his eyes at him. He took out a dry biscuit and threw it to him. "You won't choke to death." If it was any other day, Lin Shuanghe would definitely argue with him. Today, he was really weak and hungry. He sat down and took a big bite of the biscuit. The biscuit was dry. When he swallowed it, it hurt his throat. The taste was not considered delicious. Lin Shuanghe really choked. Yan He looked at him with disdain. He passed the water bottle in his hand to him. "Are you reincarnated from a hungry ghost?" Lin Shuanghe quickly took the water bottle and took a big gulp. After he swallowed the biscuit in his mouth, he said, "Big brother, I haven't eaten for the whole day. Being a prisoner is more than that. Not only do you not have any sympathy for me, you even scolded me. Are you human?" Yan He looked at the disheveled appearance of the person opposite him. He subconsciously wanted to say a few harsh words. However, when he saw his stained clothes, he swallowed the mocking words that were about to come out of his mouth. Forget it. To be honest, Lin Shuanghe's trip this time was really out of his expectations. Originally, Yan He thought that even though Lin Shuanghe had been to the Liang Province Guard before, the Liang Province Guard did not fight a war. In any case, he lived in the guard station and did not have to suffer the hardships of the world. When he really arrived at G County, this pampered and spoiled young master would definitely cry to the heavens. He did not expect that from the beginning until now, Lin Shuanghe had not uttered a single word. Even though he did not draw his sword and soak in blood with those Yudo at the very front, taking care of those injured soldiers and comforting the civilians who were frightened by the plague was not an easy task. Moreover, it was very dangerous. Yan He snorted and did not reply. Lin Shuanghe took a few more bites of the biscuit and drank some water. The food and drink filled his stomach a little. He did not feel as uncomfortable and became spirited again. He looked at Yan Nongguang and said, "Yan Nongguang, I can be considered to have suffered greatly here. When we return to Shuo capital, you must truthfully report my contributions here to the emperor. In any case, I was given an official position. When have I ever suffered so much in my life? What kind of biscuit is, if it was me in the past, even my family's dog would not eat it." This person began to speak nonsense after coming back to life. Yan He laughed coldly. "No one here is forcing you to eat it. Furthermore, I have not seen you suffer much. What time is it now, yet you still have the mood to joke around with women? Lin Shuanghe, you really can't change your habit of womanizing wherever you go. Don't speak as if you are full of righteousness, Lin Shuanghe scolded him. You have a wife and a child, but I am still single. How do I know which girl is destined to be with me? Naturally, I have to try. You have already hung yourself to death on a tree, yet you are jealous of others picking flowers and smelling grass. Are you crazy? When Yan He heard this, he was about to retort when a soldier passing by said in surprise, Generals Yan, you have a child? Yan He glared at Lin Shuanghe. Lin Shuanghe coughed softly. Xia Qingxiu's pregnancy had not been announced to the public yet. However, now that someone had heard it, there was no reason for him to deny it. Yan He said, he is not born yet. He is in my wife's womb. The soldier looked to be in his 30s. His face was dark and he had a simple and honest appearance. Hearing this, he also sat down and scratched his head. That's good. When the general returns from this battle, you'll be able to see the child. Just like me in the past. Yan He asked, you have a child? Nonsense. Lin Shuanghe could not help but say, do you think you are the only one in the world who can be a father? The man scratched his head and smiled. Yes, there are two. The older one is 3 years old, and the younger one is just 1 month old. When I returned this time, I wanted to accompany my wife for a few more days, but I didn't expect the Yudo to come. I told my wife that when I return after the war and get my salary, I will make a silver necklace for my younger son. As for my older daughter, when I left, she cried so much that my heart was broken. Yan He had never been an approachable person. Because of his noble background and arrogant temperament, even when he interacted with his subordinates, he would always be a little arrogant. Today, because this man was also his father, it was rare for him to say a few more words. He asked, do you have a deep relationship with your daughter? You have been living in the military camp, and you don't go home often, right? How can she still be close to you? Lin Shuanghe was puzzled. Are you seeking the experience of your predecessors for the trouble you may encounter in the future? Yan He scolded him, shut up. Then he looked at the man in front of him, tell me quickly. I don't know either. The man was a little confused. It's true that I don't go home often, but every time I go home, I remember to bring her favorite malt candy, buy her beautiful cloth, and ask my wife to make new clothes for her. Generals Yan, you don't have to worry. People say that daughters are all biological fathers. If your wife gives birth to a daughter, she will definitely be very close to you, Generals Yan. Yan He was elated by his words, but then his expression became serious. What if it's a son? Isn't that better? The man said, the general can bring the young master with him. Father and son don't have to be separated on the battlefield. Yan He suddenly understood and looked at the person in front of him. I didn't expect you to be so smart as a father. Lin Shuanghe was speechless when he heard this. After the man was praised by his superior, he laughed foolishly for a while. Suddenly, he became silent again. After a while, he sighed and said, when my daughter left, she kept hugging my leg. I know that she was afraid that I would die on the battlefield. If, he looked at the sky far away, I can go back alive, I will definitely buy her favorite candy cake. Yan He was stunned for a while. After a while, he also looked into the distance. The sky was dyed red by the setting sun. The setting sun was like blood, and the field was gentle and silent. Don't worry, he said, she will definitely eat the candy cake you bought. Chapter 262. The yellow sand stretched for thousands of miles, and the dark clouds hung low. The sandstorm kicked up dust as the two armies clashed. After the Dawei troops camped outside Jiuquan City for 5 days, the Yudo in the city could no longer hold back. The number of soldiers decreased by the day, and the marquises from Dawei never faced them head-on. Even the spies they sent out fought with the Dawei soldiers. When the Dawei soldiers reached the city gates, they did not dare to continue the chase. Ever since it was engraved in the Yudo's bones, the news that Maka and Huyate had sent back was treated as an excuse for their incompetence. A woman, who only had a bit of fame because of her husband, was nothing to be afraid of. Even the Dawei's own subordinates could not control her. In just 5 days, half of them had deserted. The Yudo leader was certain that the Dawei soldiers were afraid. That night, he ordered his elite troops to chase after the remaining Dawei troops. When the Yudo soldiers reached the outskirts of the city and walked towards the Gobi Desert, they suddenly heard the deafening sounds of fighting. The Dawei troops who were lying in ambush on both sides fired arrows at the same time. The arrows rained down like a storm, catching them off guard. Right at this moment, another group of cavalrymen charged over with sabers in their hands. The one in the lead was a young woman in red armor. Her eyes were sharp, and she held a pale sword in her hand. It was as if she wanted to cut through the sky. She was unrivaled as she rode on the wind. The two armies clashed, and the sound of drums filled the air. When the Fuyue army was taken in by General Feihong, they were like divine soldiers. No one could stop them. Ever since the real General Feihong left, they had not been able to hold their heads high like they were today. The frail and petite woman seemed to contain an enormous amount of power within her body. The Fuyue army was like the best blade in her hands. Her formations and ambushes were all exquisite. He Yen crouched on the back of the horse. The long sword was like her arm. She charged into the enemy's camp without any fear. Wherever the long sword flew, blood sprayed and the enemy's head was chopped off from the horse. Her smile lit up the gloomy night in the Gobi Desert. The Yudo was beaten to the point that they had to abandon their armor and flee. The last trace of blood on the long saber was wiped away, and the fierce battle was over. Yudo was either dead or captured. Although the city gate was not broken, the first battle could be considered a victory. The deputy general excitedly found the woman who was walking back. Ignoring his tired body, he ran over and said, "Milord, this battle was won beautifully. Milord, you have a brilliant plan." Tien smiled. "It's not my doing." Her armor was full of blood stains, and her face was also stained with blood. Perhaps it was not only Yuto's, but her posture was straight and she did not look tired at all. Instead, her eyes were bright and full of energy. When the Fuyue army saw her, they felt relieved. It seemed that as long as she was here, they would definitely be the winner in this battle with the Yudo. In the army, strength and fists were the most important thing. If it was before, the Fuyue army still had some objections to Hiyan's leadership and did not understand why she ordered people to reduce the number of soldiers every day. But after this battle, she really won the hearts of the soldiers. Everyone could see the effectiveness of the ambush and the formation. She took the lead on the battlefield and led the soldiers. Her sword was awe-inspiring and it was not fake. Perhaps, if the real General Feihong was here, he would also have the same style. He Yen said, "Let the military doctors treat the injured brothers first. Those who are not injured, clean up the battlefield." She paused and said, "It's daybreak, we still have to attack the city." "Attack the city? It's only been one night, I'm afraid that the brothers..." He Yen smiled and said, "It's not really attacking the city, it's just harassing them." Although this battle was won beautifully, it was not an easy victory. The army that was sent out was the elite of the Yudo. It was difficult for the Fuyue army to fight against them, but they still had the upper hand. And this was only the first step. Someone ran from behind and called out to her while panting, He Darren." He Yen turned around and saw that it was Jiang Jiao. She asked, "What's wrong?" "Brother Shan." Jiang Jiao's face was very ugly. "You should go and take a look." Hong Shan's chest was pierced by the Yudo. After taking off his armor, his clothes were dyed red with blood. Wang Ba and the others surrounded He Yen. The military doctor saw that He Yen came over and shook his head. He Yen walked over. This man who always patted her shoulder with a smile and called her "B" would never wake up. Hong Shan's skills were not the best among this group of people, but he always tried his best to keep up with everyone's pace. He Yen still remembered that the first person she met when she joined the army was Hong Shan. This man treated her as his thin and weak younger brother and always took care of her. He also once said, "There's nothing wrong with being a soldier, at least you'll be alive." But now he died on the battlefield. He did not have any keepsakes on him, so there was nothing he could take away. Wang Ba, who always said a few words, did not say anything at this moment. His eyes were a little red. They were all brothers who went through a lot together, and their relationship was deeper than others. But the cruelty of war was that no one knew in advance who would be the next to leave forever. And she did not have the time and energy to grieve here. "Let's bury him," she said softly, stood up, and walked forward. Wang Ba couldn't help but say angrily, "Hey, that's it. Tidy up." The woman's voice was firm and clear, without any unnecessary sadness. At daybreak, attack the city. The city gates opened. Thousands of soldiers and horses were on the mausoleum path, war drums thundering. The young general in silver armor was like a nimble silver dragon in the night, his blade carrying a valiant coldness. Wei Zhonglang's style of fighting was direct and fierce, pressing forward courageously. The Yan army under his command was the same. The two armies fought, leaving no way out. Although the plague in Ji County was severe, it was now under Lin Shuanghe's control. After a few small probing battles, the Yan army won a few more battles. Today, the city gates were finally breached. It was a true head-on battle. Perhaps it was because Yudo was more afraid of General Feng Yun than Yan He. Most of Yudo's soldiers were sent to Yunzi as reinforcements. The remaining soldiers in Ji County were not as many as the Yan army. De Wei temporarily had the upper hand. Winning a battle was the best way to raise morale. At this moment, the Yan army's morale was at its peak. The surrounding soldiers shouted, "Kill Yudo and get them out of De Wei. Get out of De Wei." Some people laughed and shouted, "After this battle, maybe we will be the first to return to Shuajing." The people who said these words liked to hear them. Everyone knew that Generals Yan loved to compete with General Feng Yun. If they won this battle and returned to Shuajing first, wouldn't that mean that their general was stronger than military governor Xiao? Yan He also felt good when he heard this. At this moment he saw the De Wei soldiers fighting Yudo in front of him. They looked familiar. He immediately remembered that this was the man who had told him about his child a few days ago. Yan He still remembered that this man's daughter was only 3 years old. At this moment he was fighting Yudo with all his might and did not see the arrow flying from behind him. Yan He frowned. He could not be distracted on the battlefield. Perhaps it was the man's desire to return home that left a deep impression. Or perhaps it was the little girl waiting for her father to bring back Tang Guai. It made Yan He think of the unborn child in Xia Qingxiu's womb. In any case, he flew over and pushed the man away. The arrow brushed past their hair. Yan He heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, he heard the panicked cry of someone beside him, "General!" Yunzi was close to the sea. Tongji County and Jiuquan were in two completely opposite directions. The night was as dark as ink. The sound of waves hitting the rocks could be heard from the shore. The wind blew the damp smell of the sea. Looking from the shore, the sea and the sky were one. It was like taking a boat out to sea. If one kept going forward, one would reach the 9 heavens. If there was no war, the scenery here would be beautiful. However, once there was war, the vast and distant became desolate and cold. Torches could be seen in the tent. A young man in black armor was looking at the map on the sand table in deep thought. Someone walked in from outside and said, "Young master, the people you ordered to pass by the city gate with the rice loads have been arranged." Xiao Ju nodded. Good. De Wei had 2 famous generals. In the eyes of the Yuto, General Fei Hong was no longer around. The only one left who was difficult to deal with was General Feng Yun. Therefore, Yunzi had the most Yudo soldiers. However, after Xiao Ju led the southern prefecture soldiers to Yunzi, the Yudo did not fight him head-on. Perhaps it was because in the past few years, the Yudo had suffered a lot at the hands of Xiao Ju. Or perhaps they had credited Xiao Ju for the victory of De Wei in the battle between the Rundu and Jiang. This time, they would not act rashly. Therefore, the city gate was closed and they vowed not to leave the city. Fei Nu looked at the young man sitting in front of the table. "Young master, these Yudo have been unwilling to make a move because they want to wear down the southern prefecture soldiers. Although the southern prefecture soldiers and the 9 Flags Battalion soldiers will not be afraid because of this, they will not have enough food as time goes by." This was the most important thing to consider. That's what they're planning. Xiao Ju said. However, he twitched the corner of his mouth and his eyes were cold. The Yuto arrived at Yunzi before the southern prefecture soldiers. Even if there is food in the city, they have more people. The food in the city will not last long. They want to wear us down? The young man's smile was mocking. They will wear us down. The Yudo wanted to wait until the southern prefecture soldiers were starving and had low morale before they attacked. However, as time went by, the southern prefecture soldiers would not be the only ones worn down. The Yudo soldiers would also face the same predicament. So, young master purposely let them carry the rice through the city gate for the Yudo to see? Let them know that Dawei has enough food. Let's see how long they can last. Fei Nu lowered his head and said, Young master is wise. Xiao Ju put down the short stick that he used to point out the map and walked out of the tent. There was no moon outside. The patrolling soldiers walked around with torches in their hands. There were also soldiers who sat together and ate their rations. When they saw Xiao Ju, they greeted him politely. The southern prefecture soldiers and the 9 Flags Battalion were brought up by Xiao Ju. Especially the 9 Flags Battalion. It was different from the Liangzhou Guards and the Fuyue Army. The soldiers were not too close to their superiors. It was not that they were cold-hearted. It was because the right army commander had a cold personality and was very strict about military discipline. The women only saw the good looks of the jade-faced army commander, but the people in the barracks knew that under his good looks was the heart of the King of Hell. As a result, the Southern Mansion army didn't even hear a single joke. Xiao Ju walked past the tent. A soldier poked Chi Wu who was beside him and whispered, Chi Wu, what is that hanging on the army commander's waist? Is it a sachet? Why is there such an ugly thing hanging on his waist? Chi Wu was speechless. In any case, Xiao Ju was one of the most handsome men in the Great Way. Even if he was wearing armor, he would still be able to wear it in a particularly heroic and elegant manner. However, this time, when he was deployed, the accessory on his waist had become a fragrant sachet. It was unknown what it was embroidered with, but this thing was really too conspicuous, making it difficult for people to ignore. The soldiers did not dare to ask. Finally, a brave soldier could not hold himself back and asked Xiao Ju's personal subordinate, Chi Wu. That's right. Chi Wu, what is that? Someone else asked, I see that the army commander keeps it on his body every day. It seems like he treasures it a lot. Where did it come from? Chi Wu waved his hand. That was embroidered by the young mistress for the young master. What do you know? Young mistress? The soldiers who gathered around looked at each other. The one who spoke first smiled awkwardly. The young mistress's needlework is really special. It is quite special. Someone nodded and said, the army commander wears such a special sachet on his body every day. Chi Wu, I heard that the army commander dotes on the young mistress very much. Is that true? That's impossible. When have you seen the army commander dote on anyone? Can you imagine? I can't. Chi Wu was annoyed by the questions. He stood up and pointed at them as he lectured, do your night duty properly. What are you thinking about every day? Do you have a wife? Why are you so concerned about others? Be careful that the young master will punish you if he hears this. When he stood up, someone saw the boots on his feet and asked curiously, Chi Wu, your boots are quite special. Why is there a flower embroidered on it? What? There's no flower. Wow, there's really a flower. This must be embroidered by a lady. Chi Wu, when did you have a sweetheart? Why didn't you tell us? You're not loyal enough. What sweetheart? Chi Wu's face turned red. He scolded, don't talk nonsense. He turned and left. Xiao Ju walked to the shore. The shore was illuminated by the torches, reflecting the sparkling waves on the water. The night without the moonlight was somewhat chilly. He reached out and untied the sachet on his waist. On the sachet, the crooked moon was looking at him. It was as if he could see through the poor needlework and see the bright smile of the owner. The young man stared at the sachet in his hand, the corners of his mouth slightly curved. Jiuchuan and Yunzi were too far away. It would take a long time for the news to reach here. He didn't know how her situation was, but she should be able to handle it. He raised his eyes to look at the horizon. The sea was endless. Only the sound of the waves could be heard. It was like the ravings of a lover's dream, scattered little by little in the night of the battlefield. Shujing. The wind in the night blew open the window that was not closed properly. The paper on the table rustled in the wind. The person on the bed opened her eyes. She lit the lamp and got out of bed. She walked to the window and looked at the night sky. The capital was quiet. There was not the slightest bit of panic about the war. It was hard to imagine what the soldiers were doing on the battlefield thousands of li away. Behind her, a maid's sleepy voice sounded, "Madam, why are you up?" Xia Qingxiu smiled. "It's nothing. I just couldn't sleep." The maid walked to her side and reached out to close the window. She supported her as she walked in. "Madam, be careful. Now that you are pregnant, the spring wind is cold. Don't catch a cold. If the general asks, I will have to suffer." The entire Yan manor knew that although General Yan was arrogant and domineering, he did not like to punish his subordinates. However, as long as it concerned Xia Qingxiu, he would be very calculative. When Xia Qingxiu first entered the manor, the beautiful daughter of the manor's housekeeper was hostile towards Xia Qingxiu. She secretly provoked him. When General Yan found out, he chased her and her family out of the manor. He did not give them any face. Before this expedition, he had specifically told everyone in the Yan manor that if anything happened to Xia Qingxiu and the child in her belly, the entire manor would be implicated. General Yan was a man of his word. Of course, the servants were always worried about Xia Qingxiu, afraid that something would happen. Xia Qingxiu could not help but laugh when he thought of how worried he was. He said, "It's not that exaggerated. I have people looking after me in the manor. The doctor comes to check my pulse every day. I'm not that delicate." The servant girl smiled and said, "The general is also worried about madam." Xia Qingxiu lowered her head and looked at her lower abdomen. She reached out and touched it. She couldn't feel anything, but strangely, she felt as if she could sense the joy of the little guy inside her through the touch of her blood vessels. The servant girl saw her actions and asked with a smile, "If the general can catch up with the birth of the young master or young lady, that would be good. The general loves madam so much. After the young master and young lady are born, he will be the best father in Shuojing." "If that's the case," Xia Qingxiu said with a smile, "he must have thought of how to teach the child." The child had not been born, but he had already named it. Xia Qingxiu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Before he left, he seriously apologized to Mu Xia. He said that the war was urgent and that he could not accompany her for now. When he returned, he would make it up to her and asked her not to be angry at her father. Who knew if the child in her belly was a Mu Xia or a Liang Jiang? However, Xia Qingxiu inexplicably looked forward to it. What would He be like when he became a father? Before she married He, she had seen this young man's fierce and provocative appearance. At that time, she did not expect that this person would become her husband. She also did not expect that the general of Guide, who fought against the heavens and earth outside, would be so obedient to her at home. If he became a father, whether it was a Mu Xia or a Liang Jiang, he would love and teach them with all his heart. He would watch them grow up day by day and become outstanding people. Just like him. "Madam, you miss the general, right?" The servant girl beside her looked at her expression and asked. Xia Qingxiu smiled. Under the light, the woman's originally gentle eyes were unbelievably gentle. After some time, she made a sound of agreement and replied seriously, "I miss him." Chapter 263. After the Guyu rain, it would be summer soon. At this time of the year, it should be raining non-stop. But in Zhochuan, the desert stretched as far as the eye could see. It was already summer and the sun was long and hot. The soldiers' lips were cracked and peeling. The battle was particularly fierce. After the victory of the first battle, He Yan led the Fuyue army to fight against the Yudo several times. The Wudua people had suffered at the hands of the Marquis of Wu, and time again. They gradually understood that the Marquis of Wu was not a useless person who was lucky enough to be appointed an official. Her ingenuity in setting up formations, her bravery in battle, and even her proficiency in swordsmanship made the Wuduo people think of the legendary general Fei Hong. It was the same. He Yen began to counterattack after several battles and roughly grasped the Yudo's fighting style. She was very patient and was not in a hurry to attack the city. She only used the tactic of defend when the enemy comes, pursue when the enemy leaves, attack when the enemy leaves. The Yudo could not stand the constant harassment. For a long time, their morale was low and they were depressed and tired. It seemed that they were losing the battle each time. Today was the day to attack the city. A woman in red armor galloped on the battlefield on a horse. Flags and drums shook the sky, and swords flashed. Under her command, the army was as agile as a dragon and rushed toward the enemy's camp with a murderous aura. Her sword was indomitable. The two armies fought and the land was dyed red. Mai Mai was fighting with a strong Yudo man. Although he was young and strong, he was not as good as Shirtu in terms of skill. At this moment, he was using all his strength. Suddenly, he kicked the knee of the man in front of him. The man staggered from the kick. Mai Mai took advantage of this opportunity and slit his throat. His opponent fell. He was relieved, but before he could show a happy smile, he was suddenly pushed to the ground and rolled twice. Xiao Mai's heart tightened. He subconsciously raised his head and saw Shirtu holding him with his back. A black arrow pierced his back, leaving only a bit of the arrow feather exposed. Shirtu's lips moved, but he only had time to say 2 words, "Be careful." Another arrow pierced his back. The young man spat out a mouthful of blood. "Big brother," Xiao Mai shouted in grief. On the other side, Wang Ba saw this and rushed toward the 2 Yudo archers who were lying in ambush. The lively young man who was always smiling was now panicked. Big. Stone strenuously looked at his younger brother in front of him. 2 arrows had hit him in the chest. His strength was slowly draining away. The battlefield was so chaotic and little Wheat was in danger. Then the light in his eyes went out. Xiao Mai let out a painful cry. Unfortunately, this was a battlefield, and no one noticed his sadness. Death happened at any time and place. Huang Xiong's armor was broken, and there were many wounds on his body and face. He was already very old. He could easily deal with ordinary thieves, but it was a little difficult to deal with these fierce and cunning Yudo. The Yudo in front of him was fighting with him. His hand was cut by a knife, and his flesh was badly mutilated. When he held his knife, he felt a piercing pain. His strength was gradually draining away. Even the golden knife that had accompanied him for many years became extraordinarily heavy, as if it was difficult to wield. The Yudo saw his exhaustion. He laughed and said, "No, this big guy can't take it anymore." Probably because of his majestic appearance and the conspicuous golden knife, the Yudo paid attention to him and shouted, "This knife is mine." Huang Xiong said in a low voice, "In your dreams." He held the big knife in his hand and chopped at the edge of the opponent's knife. At this moment he suddenly felt a chill on his back. A long knife penetrated his chest from his back, and he staggered. The Yudo behind him laughed presumptuously. However, halfway through his laughter, the bear-like man shouted and suddenly turned around. Ignoring the wounds on his body, he raised the big knife in his hand and instantly cut off the head of the Yudo behind him. The other man's complacent laughter also came to an abrupt end at the moment when a ray of golden light was about to take his life. The armor on his body was completely pierced by the tip of the knife. He held the handle and pulled it out. The moment he pulled it out, he finally couldn't hold on and fell to the ground. In his hand, he was still holding the golden knife tightly. For so many years, he had been homeless because of this knife, but it was also this knife that accompanied him for thousands of miles to kill his enemies. He was now alone in this world, and he had no attachments. Before he died, he only had this close friend who had accompanied him for many years to accompany him. But the strong man looked at the sky. The prayer beads on his chest were warm and dark. In a trance, he saw his mother gently praying in front of the temple for her son to return soon. His sisters were preparing hot dishes. His elder brother was in the courtyard asking his nephew about the homework he had just learned today. It was so peaceful, so comfortable. He closed his eyes in peace, and his expression was unprecedentedly peaceful. The Longzi had been wandering outside for so long, and now he could finally return home. The city was broken. Their armor and soldiers were withdrawn, and their bones were exposed in the wilderness. The soldiers cheered for this hard-won victory. Everyone who survived had a happy smile on their face. The woman in the lead was in high spirits, and she didn't look tired at all. She was always like this, as if she never had a weak side. It was because of her that the morale of the Fuyue army was rising day by day. Yudo was beaten to the point of abandoning the city and escaping. At this point, Jiuquan was finally retaken by Dawei. He Yan's face still had traces of blood that he hadn't had time to wipe off. Just as he was about to go and count the spoils of war, he saw Wang Ba walk towards him with a serious expression. The smile at the corner of his lips immediately disappeared. "Come and take a look," he said. In the past few days of war, people constantly died. The men from the Liang province guard finally realized that this time was different from the previous times. The war made them grow quickly, and made them quiet, determined, and calm. Wang Ba was no longer the person who would shout and shout. These days he was much quieter. He Yan followed him forward. The soldiers who died in battle could only be buried on the spot. The soldiers who survived were checked one by one to see if they had any keepsakes on them. If they could find them, they would return to Shuajing and give them to their families. Before the soldiers here went to battle, most of them had a letter on them. If they were unfortunate enough to die in battle, their comrades would bring the letter back to their families. Tian saw Shi Tu and Huang Xiong. She understood a long time ago that when people went onto the battlefield, they couldn't decide whether they lived or died. The moment they put on their armor, they were prepared to give up their lives. The people who survived to the end were the least fortunate. They couldn't help but see their comrades leave one by one. First, it was Hong Shan. Now, it was Shi Tu and Huang Xiong. Shi Tu had died from an arrow. The arrow had been pulled out, and the clothes on his chest had been dyed red. Huang Xiong had died from a blade. Rumor had it that in the end, he had perished together with Tu Yuto. When they finally found him, he was still tightly gripping the blade in his hand. He Yan half knelt in front of the two of them and carefully tidied up their tattered clothes. Xiao Mai cried until her voice was hoarse. Her eyes were red. He Yan still remembered the first time she met Shi Tu and Xiao Mai. They were hunters who grew up in the mountains. They told her about their ambition to join the army. Xiao Mai was lively and naive. She loved to eat and play. Shi Tu was taciturn and prudent. The war had changed everything. A soldier asked, "Sir, Brother Huang's blade. If such a good blade was used on the battlefield, it would make people envious. He has no family. This blade is his family. It has accompanied him for so many years. It should be buried with him." He Yan looked at the man on the ground, the big brother who couldn't tell the direction and always got lost. Looking at the calm smile on his face, it seemed that he had already found the way home. She stood up. Her sadness lasted for only a moment. She said, "Tell them to come to my tent. I have something to discuss about the war." Her footsteps were firm. She didn't look back. As if to celebrate the victory of retaking Jiuquan, the moon came out in the middle of the night. The woman in the tent put the last stroke on the map. She rubbed her eyes, stood up, and walked out. She climbed up the city gate tower and looked into the distance. Outside the city, there was a vast expanse of yellow sand. In the distance, the beacon fires shone on the flat ground. The Gobi Desert was desolate. The white city gate tower here was like a lonely boat in the deep sea. A crescent moon hung in the night sky, illuminating the desolate night. She sat down on the ground. Her stomach made a soft sound. She realized that she hadn't eaten anything since the end of the war. He Yan was startled when a dry biscuit was handed to her. Jiang Jiao walked over from behind and sat down beside her. He said, "I knew you probably didn't eat, so I saved it for you." He Yan smiled. "Thank you." She took a bite of the dry biscuit. The coarse grain entered her stomach, bringing her true satisfaction. Jiang Jiao handed her a bottle of water. She raised her head and drank a big mouthful. Her posture was cheerful. There were still traces of mud and blood on her face. She looked particularly haggard. Only her eyes were still as bright as the stars. He suddenly felt a little emotional. In the Fuyue army, everyone said that He Yen was born brave. She commanded troops like a god and never felt tired. Even the men needed to rest after such a big battle. However, since she left the battlefield, she had been counting the results of the war, arranging and commanding the next pursuit, and reanalyzing the enemy's situation. Until now, she hadn't changed her clothes or eaten any dry food. Only now, on the city gate tower, when she sat on the ground, did she reveal a little of her own exhaustion. He heard He Yan's voice. "How is Xiao Mai?" "Not so good. Wang Ba has been accompanying her." Jiang Jiao's voice lowered. Half of the Liangzhou guards had left. As for who would be the next to leave, and who would be able to walk to the end and return to Shuojing alive, no one could say for sure. He Yen raised her head and drank a mouthful of water. Her voice was still calm. "We have to make him come out quickly." These words were cruel, but Jiang Jiao understood that this was a battlefield. On the battlefield, there was no time for sorrow. He Yen didn't cry, but that didn't mean she wasn't sad. After all, she was a woman. Staying here alone and watching the people around her leave one by one should be very powerless. "Brother He," Jiang Jiao asked, "do you miss the commander?" He was answered with silence. After a while, He Yen raised her head and looked far away from the city gate tower. In the desolate desert, only the silver-white crescent moon quietly hung in the night sky. "No." She raised the corner of her mouth slightly. It was as if she saw another person through the crescent moon. "I know he's here." The sound of crows came from afar. The cold night wind blew the torches like stars. The young female general stood up and patted the shoulder of the person beside her. "Let's go back early. There's still a tough battle to fight tomorrow." She turned and left. Ji region had been raining for days. The rainwater washed away the mud and blood on the ground. If not for the scattered weapons and corpses, Bing wouldn't be able to tell that there had just been a fierce battle. In the tent, a man dressed in hemp clothes looked at the general sitting in the tent. He was shocked and angry. "Yan Nongguang, you don't want to live anymore." His last white robe was not spared from the fate of being cut into strips of cloth. From then on, he wore the hemp clothes of a commoner and walked through the Yen family army camp. Today, the Lin family young master no longer had his elegant demeanor. 20 hours a day, 20 hours a day, his face was dirty and his hands were stained with blood. The battle was getting more and more tense by the day. There were more and more injured soldiers. There were not enough military doctors. And he was the most powerful one here. He was also the one who made people feel at ease. But today, only Lin Shuanghe knew how uneasy he was. Yen he did not pay any attention to him. He only frowned as he counted the results of last night's battle. Last night, the Yen army had defeated the Wuduo people. They had killed 10,000 enemies and seized over 1,000 horses. This was a good thing worthy of celebration. "Yan Nongguang, did you hear what I said?" Lin Shuanghe said anxiously. "I heard you." Yen he replied impatiently. "Then do you know that you are in danger now?" Lin Shuanghe lowered his voice. "You will lose your life." That day, Yen he acted and saved the father of 2 children from the hands of the Wuduo people. However, he was injured by the Wuduo people who had secretly shot him. Although his vital organs were not injured, only his arm was pierced. However, the other party had originally come for him, and the arrow was smeared with poison. Lin Shuanghe could not detoxify the poison. On the battlefield, there were no herbs for him to slowly develop an antidote. The poison was spreading day by day. If he did not find an antidote soon, Yen he would die. But he had been killing and fighting for the past few days. The poison on his wound had spread faster and deeper. It made Lin Shuanghe's heart jump. If Yen he could temporarily put aside the battle, the poison would spread slower and he might be able to last longer. But now, if this continued, maybe he would not be able to wait until he returned to Shuojing. "Have you developed an antidote?" Yen he frowned and asked. Lin Shuanghe was startled. He replied dejectedly, "No. Since you are going to die, why do you care so much?" Yen he said disapprovingly. He did not seem to care at all. It was as if he was talking about someone else's life. He did not even feel worried. Lin Shuanghe asked, "Do you really want to continue like this?" "Lin Shuanghe, this is a battlefield." Yan He's voice was solemn. "Recently, we have been receiving good news. The Yudo's morale has been greatly damaged. If this continues, we will be able to take back Ji County very soon. At this time, we have to strike while the iron is hot. If we don't take them down when their morale is at its peak, it will be difficult to wait for such an opportunity in the future. On the battlefield, there is no time to rest." Lin Shuanghe closed his eyes. He knew that Yan He was right. What he said was the truth. However, as a medical practitioner, he knew that if this continued, there might be a slim chance of survival, but it would become impossible. "You have to know." He spoke with difficulty. "If you continue like this and don't rest, at most, 3 months. 3 months. Yan He said, "Then we will finish this battle within 3 months." Until now, he was still thinking about the outcome of this battle. Lin Shuanghe could not help but say, "Even if you don't care, don't you think about Qingxiu? Yan Nongguang, your child is still waiting for you to return." Yan He's fingers trembled slightly, but his expression remained normal. He said nonchalantly, "Since you know, then hurry up and create an antidote for me. Otherwise, what's the use of having you here? Since you are a godly doctor, do you only know how to treat women and not men?" If it was any other time, Lin Shuanghe would have stepped forward to argue with someone who questioned his medical skills. But now, he only looked at Yan He. He suddenly understood that even if this person knew that he only had 1 day to live, he would use this last day to be a good commander. On the battlefield, he was not Xia Qingxiu's husband, nor was he Yan Muxia's father. He was the leader of the Yan army, the general of Dawei. That was all. "I understand." Lin Shuanghe looked at him deeply. "I will do my best." He turned and walked out. In front of the table, Yan He raised his eyes and looked at Lin Shuanghe's back. Suddenly, he vomited a ball of black blood. The poison would not only cause him to lose his life, it would also cause him to suffer. But this could not be revealed in front of others. The Yan army needed a backbone. Before they won this battle, he could never fall. Yan He casually pulled a cloth from the side and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His painful expression disappeared and his gaze landed on the defensive map in front of him again. 3 months. He had to end this battle quickly. In the academy, on the green lotus leaves in the pond, pink buds started to appear. Dragonflies swept across the water, their glass-like wings creating a faint ripple. After the beginning of summer, the days became longer. The wind also brought with it warm sunlight. In the afternoon, in the academy, the sun was just right. The youths sat down and dozed off. Good times were always exceptionally long. Someone ran in from outside with joy and excitement. He jumped onto the table in one breath and said, good news, Marquis Wu, the Fuyue army led by Master He, has taken back Jiuquan and defeated the Wu Tao bandits." The originally dull afternoon was instantly awakened by this news. "Really? They took back Jiuquan so quickly?" "It's true, the news has already spread outside. I just came back from outside. That Marquis Wu is very powerful. The 4 great generals sent out their troops separately, but the Fuyue army led by a woman was the first to take down a city." "So what if she is a woman? Wasn't the original leader of the Fuyue army, General Fei Hong, also a woman? I think Marquis Wu is also a heroine. Who knows, maybe when she returns to the capital, the emperor will give her a high-ranking official. In the future, she will be the Wu general." In the corner of the academy, the youth who was sitting there was stunned. When he heard this news, he still couldn't believe it. Yanwan? He took back Jiuquan? Just as he was thinking, a group of people suddenly surrounded him. "Yunsheng, your sister is so powerful. She achieved merit so quickly. I think your He family will only soar up in the future. Hey, brother He, from today onwards, we are good brothers. When you become successful in the future, don't forget to help this little brother." But all of you were talking behind Master He's back. All of you are relying on military governor Xiao and don't have any ability. Now, all of you are slapping your faces. That Master He went to Jiuquan by himself, but he was able to send back the news before Generals Yan, Military Governor Xiao, and Huwei General. It can be seen that he is truly capable. Yes, he is truly capable. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Brother Yunxing. Yunxing was surrounded by people, but he wasn't blinded by the enthusiastic compliments of his classmates. There was only one thought in his mind. He Yen won, and she was safe. The youth slightly turned his head, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. In his heart, he thought, at least she kept her promise this time. The pomegranate tree in Xiao Mansion became the best place to hide from the sun during summer. The yellow dog was lying under the tree, lazily squinting its eyes. Qing Mei added water to its water tank and wiped the sweat from its forehead. Just as she was about to return to her room, a shadow suddenly jumped in from outside and said cheerfully, "Sister Qing Mei, Sister Qing Mei." Qing Mei was startled. When she saw Baigua running over like a gust of wind, she hurriedly supported her. "What's the matter? Why are you so happy?" "I just went outside and heard the people outside saying that second young madam won the battle and led the Fuyue army to take back Juchuan. Qing Mei, second young madam, has done a great deed." Air Mao was also infected by Baigua's excitement. He jumped up and ran 2 circles around Baigua. Bai Rongwei was supported by a maidservant as she walked over. She couldn't hide the surprise in her voice. "Really? It's true," Baigua happily said. "They say that second young madam is very powerful. Although it's the first time she led an army alone, she has won many battles and took back Juchuan so quickly. This servant heard that when second young madam comes back, the emperor will definitely reward her handsomely. Who knows, maybe we'll have another general in our mansion." Bai Rongwei was amused by her words and said angrily, "You really know how to talk." She then shook her head and smiled. The reward for the meritorious service is not important. As long as he is safe, everyone will be happy. Her lower abdomen was gradually bulging, but because of the war at the border, Xiao Ruby was also very busy every day. When Bai Rongwei was alone, she couldn't help but worry about Xiao Ju and He Yen. If the two of them were in the same place, it would be fine. They could take care of each other, but they were in opposite directions. Xiao Ju was fine because she was always on the battlefield. The Nanfu army was also led by Xiao Zhongwu, but He Yen was different. It was her first time leading an army. Not everyone in the Fuyue army was convinced. She was also a woman, so there were many inconveniences. Bai Rongwei's heart was broken. Now, she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. "I think it won't be long before Uncle He returns." Bai Rongwei smiled and said, "If he knows that he has won a battle, he will be very happy." Ever since He Yen and Xiao Ju left the capital, Bai Rongwei and Xiao Jing went to He Sui's house more frequently. First, the house that Xiao Ju bought for them was close to the Xiao family. It was only a street away, so it was convenient for them to come and go. Second, Bai Rongwei thought that if she, as the sister-in-law, was so worried, He Sui, as the father, would be even more worried. He Yunxing was also a 17 or 18-year-old youth. In the end, he wasn't as caring as his daughter. Xiao Zhongwu and his wife had passed away early. He Sui was He Yan's father, so he was their father. Therefore, the husband and wife often went to talk to He Sui to relieve his boredom. This in-law was more harmonious than the other families in the capital. "Eldest young master will be back soon," Baigua chirped. "Friend, since today is a happy occasion, this servant will go to the kitchen to make some good dishes. Let's treat it as a celebration." "Okay," Bai Rongwei smiled and said, "Qing Mei, you should also go to the He family. Tonight, call Uncle He and Yunxing to eat together." Qing Mei heard this and revealed a big smile. "Okay, this servant will go now." In the palace, in the imperial study, Zhao Kong Emperor looked at the memorial in front of him and couldn't help but reveal a gratified smile. Since he ascended the throne, this was probably the happiest thing. The chamberlains saw the expression on the emperor's face and said, "The Empress Dowager came this morning. Your Majesty is busy with government affairs. It is already late." Zhao Kong Emperor stood up and said, "Zhen will go see Muhu." In Qinglan Palace, Concubine Lan, who should be the Empress Dowager now, was leaning on a soft couch and reading. Although she was already the Empress Dowager, she didn't move out of the palace. Her actions were the same as before. Zhao Kong Emperor approached and called out. The Empress Dowager put down the scroll in her hand and looked at the person in front of her. She smiled slightly. Your Majesty seems to be in a good mood today. Are you happy because of the victory in Jiuquan? In front of his mother, Emperor Zhao Kong finally revealed his true feelings. He smiled and said, Of course, I didn't think that the Wuthen Marquis would be so valiant. Compared to Yan He Xiao Huijin, he was the first to take down a city. Although he originally gave the military power to He Yan, most of it was for the sake of Xiao Ju. As for He Yan's ability, he had only heard about it from others. He didn't know how good she was at leading troops in battle. Now, the news of victory made him feel relieved. This woman was more outstanding than he had imagined. It seems that your Majesty still underestimated her. You didn't think that Marquis Wu En could really gallop on the battlefield. The Empress Dowager understood. Zhao Kong Emperor was a little embarrassed. Jin just didn't expect that there would be a second woman like General Fei Hong in this world. Back then, General Fei Hong was already 1 in 10,000. It was a pity that such a talent had fallen. Now, such a lucky general had appeared. Who wouldn't say that the heavens were blessing the Dawei? Aijia has already told you, the Empress Dowager said softly, don't underestimate women. There are millions of women in Dawei. You don't know that there will be a third and a fourth General Fei Hong. Imperial Mother is right. Marquis Wu En is a pure and honest person. Such a good official can only be found by chance. Since your Majesty has met her, you must recruit her. This time, she took back Jiuquan and made a great contribution. The He family doesn't have any background. Has your Majesty thought about how to reward Marquis Wu En? Hearing this, Zhao Kong Emperor smiled and said, Imperial Mother doesn't need to worry about this. Zhen has already thought about it. When she returns to the court, Zhen will bestow her the title of a true general. From then on, she will leave her mark in the history of Dawei. Just like General Fei Hong. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.